about that. I'm not sure what happened there. Uh, I think there was like some kind of a glitch, but yeah, we're good. We're good to go. All right. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic podcast. Welcome to another stream. So thank you guys for joining. By the way, brother K is here. Brother Doctor is here. Yes, I was just watching Naruto. Bro, stop watching Naruto. Let me know if the if the streaming is working properly. I mean, you're like a mod, bro. Come on. But anyway, so yeah, welcome back to the stream. So it's been a while since I did another live stream. So uh, so by the way, brother Doctor says he's watching Naruto. Which Naruto is it? Naruto Shippuden or just like normal Naruto? I'm sorry. That's fine. That's fine. No worries. Anyway, so the reason I wanted to do this stream is because I saw a debate between Daniel and a Hindu apologist recently. Did you guys have a chance to watch the debate? Um, Brother Doctor says the first one. Oh, he's talking about the first Naruto. I mean, I watched Naruto a long time ago. Like it's like an ancient anime at this point. Uh, but uh, but yeah. So yeah, basically, I had a chance to watch the debate. And I noticed that throughout the debate, the Hindu apologist, I think his name is Arjuna, he lied about Hinduism for throughout the whole debate. And I think because it was like a heat of the moment, Brother Daniel didn't call out a lot of the kind of like lies that he said about Hinduism because I think. So I figured that I should just review the debate and call out all the lies and expose him because he lied about Hinduism quite a lot. Uh, so Brother K said that he did watch the debate. That's nice. Brother Doctor didn't watch the debate. Well, overall, I think Daniel obviously won the debate. He basically roasted the Hindu apologist. But yeah, overall, it was a good debate. And I think this is the first time a Muslim apologist is actually having like a proper debate with a Hindu apologist because it doesn't happen. So it was a nice change, I think, because mostly we just like debate with this like Christians and like this kind of like clowns, people like God Logic and all this. And so it was nice to see, uh, you know, to see Brother Daniel tackle Hinduism. But yeah, so basically, what we're gonna do, we're gonna react to the debate. Brother K said, oh, he did one before. Yeah, I think I noticed that. I think he was with like Adam Seeker or something like that. No, it's not Adam Seeker, but one of the Hindus. Uh, Lol, we see why Hindus don't debate now. Yeah, yeah, they don't debate a lot. Like I think it's mostly because they're too scared to do debates because it's very easy to expose Hinduism. I mean, like you can just quote quote the scriptures, and it is just some of the stuff is absolutely hilarious. Like you have stuff like incest, you have the stuff like horse sex ritual, dead horse sex ritual, and you have other things like there's this one story of like this. Uh, uh, I don't know, like there's this one story of like people masturbating, like gods masturbating in Hinduism, and like there's this one story of Shiva basically masturbating, and gold mines coming out of it, coming out of his ejaculation. Like this is the kind of stories that exist in Hinduism. Now, many Hindus would claim that, oh, these are just, guys, these are just, these are just kind of like metaphors and whatnot. And the thing is that what kind of metaphor is this? I mean, like you're saying that some, like this Hindu god is like ejaculating, or masturbating, and like what is this a metaphor for? Right? Like, this is like a nasty description. Uh, we see Blaze Guardian says debate with Adam Seeker. Are you kidding? uh, how is master reading? Okay, so Blaze Guardian, I'm gonna let you know something. This stream is about Hinduism. It's not about Islam. So don't try to don't come here insulting Islam, because it's not going to help you or your fake religion. So if you're going to bring some points about Hinduism, because the topic is Hinduism. So yeah, I think we already have a Ajit getting mad in the comments. By the way, doctor, do some proper moderation. If you see anyone insulting the Prophet ﷺ or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first warn them, then ban them. All right. Okay. So yeah, Daniel had this debate, and overall, I think the debate was pretty well. Best Guardian says it means Islam is true religion. Yes, it is. Brother Fahad, can you speak Urdu? No, I mean, I guess I can a little bit. I mean, I can speak Hindi a bit, but I don't know if I can speak Urdu. But anyway, so overall, I think the debate was fine, and so let's start reacting to the debate, and let's start reviewing the debate, and let's get the show on the road, inshallah. Let me see, share screen. Here we go. There we go. Blaze Guardian says how. Well, I have a whole playlist on my channel. It's called Why Quran is the Word of God. You feel free to check it out. In that whole kind of like playlist, I explain why Islam is the truth. I give all the evidences. I make all the arguments. Feel free to check it out. Do you believe in Quran and Hadith or Shia Hadith? I'm a Sunni Muslim. But anyway, so yeah, let's start reacting to the video, inshallah. And by the way, which style do you like the best? Do you guys like the best? This one or like this one? So which one? Bro, this guy just wants to argue. Let him be for now, unless he like breaks the rules. First one, right? Okay, all right. Then let's go with this one. Is this okay? Thumbs up. Is this good? Okay, so let's start, inshallah, and then. By the way, let me know if you guys can hear the audio. All right, let's start. Bismillah.
This and show Islam to be a religion of peace. I'd love nothing more than for there to be more voices in the world presenting sensible ideas of God. But I anticipate Daniel isn't likely to take this path. Interpretation of Hinduism to a culture of warring tribes.
The audio is cut off.
This large-scale changes worldview coupled with a belief examples deeper.
Yes, wow, that's exciting. In criticism that modern
Islam fashion, soft power, not systemic military subjugation. The systemic, theologically driven violence isn't merely a relic of ancient history. Consider modern Islamic extremism in the West, a consistent pattern of knife attacks, bombings, car rammings, often by individuals shouting religious slogans, claiming to act in Islam. The fourth element is a few critical question. Well, one might believe more harm adding to the risk of many contemporary military.
So basically, the debate topic was. Oh, brother Abu Musa is here. Assalamualaikum, bro. How are you? Welcome to my stream. So basically, the debate topic was which religion is more violent, Hinduism or Islam. So that's what they're discussing, basically. So let's start. Bismillah.
Groups. Second, he must conclusively.
Okay, I think the first portion doesn't have
attack Islam, but to attack ideas that cause and justify violence. The claim I'm defending today is that Islamic violence tends to be systemic, enduring, and deeply rooted in or readily justified by Islamic doctrine. In contrast, instances of violence associated with Hindus have largely been local, episodic, and attributable to human fallibility, political opportunism, and so on. Deviations from core Vedic principles, not directly caused or sanctioned by Hindu scripture. For Daniel to even demonstrate that Islam is merely on par with Hinduism regarding violence, let alone less violent, He will face a formidable challenge. First, he must object to the vast majority of historical and current forms of violence carried out in the name of Islam, effectively disowning centuries of Islamic conquest, the actions of numerous historical figures revered by many Muslims, and the explicit claims of many contemporary militant groups. Second, he must conclusively show that these disowned instances of violence were not genuinely motivated or justified by Islamic doctrine. I'd be delighted if Daniel would do this and show Islam to be a religion of peace. I'd love nothing more than for there to be more voices in the world presenting sensible ideas of God. But I anticipate Daniel isn't likely to take this path, because not only does he have his personal convictions, but as a professional Islamic apologist, he has an audience to consider, an audience who will not tolerate him presenting a moderate view of Islam. We've witnessed how critics who dare to speak out against extremist interpretations or oppressive practices within Muslim contexts can face severe life-altering consequences. Think of individuals who, after courageously calling out religiously justified extremism.
So yeah, this is another one. This is one thing I've noticed, that throughout the debate, he basically tries to argue that supposedly Hinduism has nothing there's nothing in Hinduism that supposedly supports like violence, and this is an absurd position to take. I mean, like, are you serious? Like, if you just read Mahabharata, the whole story of Mahabharata is about violence. It's about how violence is justified. Or if you read Bhagavad Gita, which by the way he accepts, the whole thing is about violence. So, like, what is he talking about? Okay, so since we're talking about violence, let's actually explain. So basically, because he said that supposedly, uh, uh, like, Daniel needs to show how Islam is peaceful, right? And it has nothing to do with violence. First of all, that's a straw man, because no Muslim argues that there's no violent aspect of Islam. Like, that's not an argument any Muslim makes. Even when we say that Islam is a peaceful religion, this doesn't mean that there's no aspect of violence in Islam. What people means, or Muslims mean, when they say that Islam is a peaceful religion, what they mean is that Islam prefers peace over violence. It's not that there's no violence at all, because the thing is that truth is that in the real life, violence is inevitable. Like, you cannot have a world without violence. Like, complete pacifism is impossible. Which is why we don't say that Islam is like some kind of religion of pacifism, like Buddhism or like Jainism or whatever. So this is like a straw man. Like, no one argues this. Yes, Guardian says, show me peace in Islam for non-Muslim, can you? Sure, I can show you right now. As a matter of fact, I was actually going to show up a hadith which basically proves my point. So the basic principle in Islam is that Islam doesn't seek out violence, right? As a matter of fact, you should do everything you can to avoid violence. Brother K said, also, Buddhism is not non-violent either. Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about like this kind of like monk-based Buddhism, where they basically try to practice this kind of like ahimsa or whatnot, you know. Well said. They have killed many Rohingya. Yeah, exactly. And it's not just Rohingya. Like, if you look at Chinese history, it's like full of like bloody violence and whatnot. So let's take a look at this hadith, because this hadith actually is very important, because this hadith proves my point that Islam is not a violent religion. If anything, it's the opposite. So let me share with you guys the hadith, and you will know what I'm talking about. This hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. Let me make the screen a bit bigger. There we go. Delay of the fighting. It's in Sahih Bukhari, chapter 2965. Okay. So let's read the hadith. The freed slave of Omar bin Ubaidullah, who was Omar's clerk, Abdullah ibn Affan Awfa, wrote Omar a letter that contained the following. Once Allah's messenger, during a holy battle, waited till the sun had declined, and then he got up among the people and said, O people, do not wish to face the enemy in battle, and ask Allah to save you from calamities. But if you should face the enemy, then be patient and let it be known to you that paradise is under the shade of swords. Now, this statement that paradise is under the shade of sword, it often is taken out of context to make it seem like Islam is somehow a violent religion. But the truth is that is not the Islamic position. The Islamic position is that what the Prophet said, which is that do not seek out violence. because in the hadith literally says, the Prophet says, do not wish to face the enemy in battle, which means the Prophet always preferred that we don't get ourselves involved in violence or unnecessary violence. So the first principle in warfare in Islam or any kind of conflict is that we should avoid violence. We should avoid this kind of physical fighting, right? Or warfare in general. So that's the first principle. However, if that doesn't work out, then know that dying underneath a sword will make sure that you go to paradise. Meaning, the first thing you have to do is that you have to try to avoid violence. But if you cannot avoid violence, then make sure that you die fighting rather than die like a coward. That is the Islamic position. That's the position of the Mujahideen. That's the position of Muslims, right? Which is that we don't go around seeking violence, right? We don't go around glorifying violence. However, if violence comes to us, we will fight, and we will fight to the death. This is the principle of warfare in Islam. And this is very clear. I mean, if you read this hadith, it's very clear. And if you read the biography or the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, it becomes even more clear, because throughout the Prophet ﷺ's whole life, oh, brother Akil is here. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Walaikum salam, bro. Welcome to the stream. Brother K says we do offensive jihad as well. Yeah, but offensive jihad falls into this category, which is that first you have to try to avoid violence, meaning you have to try to negotiate with the other party. If that doesn't work out, or that doesn't like go well, then we fight. Brother K said, but everyone does, so it's no big deal. Yeah, like again, like offensive jihad doesn't mean that you just go around seeking violence. That's not offensive jihad. Offensive jihad is when the leader decides that there is need for jihad in a territory that's not like that you have no treaty with, right? Because in Islam there's like these three categories of land, right? There's the land that you have a treaty with, and the land that you don't have a treaty with, and then there's the land that comes under violence, or that you have a war with, right? So jihad comes under that land that you have no contract with and that is openly hostile to you. Like that's where offensive jihad is taking place. It's not taking place like with a land that's like neutral or like that has contract with you, right? So this is a context that you need to understand when it comes to offensive jihad. Offensive jihad isn't like oh, we're gonna go around and wage jihad against everybody. That's not offensive jihad, and that's not what the Prophet ﷺ did. If you look at his life, he made treaties with different tribes. Then when those treaties didn't work out, there was violence. So basically, this is the basic principle in Islam when it comes to violence. But regardless, is another thing that I wanted to bring up. Yeah, so basically, when this kind of like this Hindu apologist is trying to say that, oh, brother Hassan Hussein is here. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Welcome to the stream. So when this Hindu apologist basically says that, oh, like Islam is like this kind of like religion of violence, he's wrong. Islam is not a religion of violence. However, if someone says, oh, Islam is all about love and peace, that's not true either, because Islam is both. Islam has both aspects of violence and it has aspects of non-violence. It's basically we take the middle path, right? We take the middle path where we're not too violent, but we're not complete pacifist either. We're moderates. We do violence when there's a necessity for it. However, when we see that peace is like peace can be made, we make peace. Brother Hassan says, I'm a Shia, but I love your content. No problem, bro. Welcome to the stream. But anyway, so let's get back to the debate between Daniel and the Hindu, and then we'll go from there. Hold on. Also, another thing that he said that he said that, oh, there's no violence in Hinduism. This is false. This is blatantly false, because you have entire books in Hinduism that is all about violence, like the Mahabharata, like the Bhagavad Gita, and then you also have books in like you have historical accounts of in India where Hindu kings have caused massive amount of slaughter, and I mean massive. For example, let me give you guys a simple example of this. actually wrote it down here. There's a king in India. I believe his name was Ashoka, who lived from the year 260 to 261, right? So hold on, let me see if I have a picture of Ashoka here somewhere. Can't find pictures of Ashoka. All right. Uh, so basically, Ashoka was a very violent king in the early aspects of his life. Later on, there's a war. It's known as the Kalinga War, and in this war, uh, so basically, Ashoka was like one of the most prominent kings of the Mauryan Empire, and the Mauryan Empire was huge. Just to give you guys some idea of how huge the Mauryan Empire was. Mauryan Empire. Here, let me show you guys the image so you guys understand what I'm talking about. Share screen. There we go. So basically, this was the Mauryan Empire. Yeah, look at how big this is. Look at how massive this is. So basically, yeah. So this, wait, why isn't it showing? Give me a second. Okay, for some reason it's not showing. Give me a second. All right, hold up. Give me a second. This always happens. Share screen. There we go. There we go. There we go. So that's the Mauryan Empire. So it was massive. Like the Mauryan Empire was massive. I mean, it stretched all the way from, I believe, from Thailand to like Afghanistan, right? And yeah, it was basically it was massive. And basically, one day Ashoka decided that he's gonna conquer this land called Kalinga, and it is mentioned in the Kalinga Wars. Yeah, you can basically read the Wikipedia article of it. Let me share the screen. Here we go. Yeah, it's this one. So basically, the Kalinga War, it happened in the year 261 BCE, and it happened under Ashoka the Great. Now, Ashoka, he had a very interesting historical approach to document his kind of like conquest. So basically, what Ashoka did is that he made pillars in various different lands, and he basically wrote down all the stories of his conquest, right? It's called Edicts of Ashoka, right? These are called the Edicts of Ashoka. Let me show you. I think it's here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So these are the rock edicts. And these rocks are found all throughout Asia. Like they're found in India, they're found in like Sri Lanka, they're found in like Afghanistan, I believe even. So in one of these rocks, Ashoka says the following. Um, let me make it a bit bigger. Give me a second. Oh, come on. All right, here we go. All right, so let's hold on. Yeah, make it bigger so you guys can see. By the way, I hope I'm not boring you guys. This is just to set up some background to how violent India was or Hindu kings were. So this is what Ashoka wrote. By the way, this is not some kind of second-hand account. This is Ashoka himself speaking. Ashoka himself is saying how many people he killed in Hinduism, or like in this Hindu empire that many Hindutva or BJP want to go back to. So this is what Ashoka says. Beloved of, sorry. Beloved of the gods, King Prayadeshi Ashoka conquered the Kalingans 8 years, 8 years after his coronation. Beloved of the gods, King Priyadeshi Ashoka conquered the Kalingans 8 years after his coronation. 150,000 were deported. 150,000 people were basically ethnically cleansed. 100,000 were killed, and many more died from other causes. 100,000 people were massacred in this war. 100,000. Like, can you imagine? Like, we look at like many of these wars in modern history. Like, even if you look at like something like what's happening in Gaza, this is even way worse than that. Like 100,000 people and 150,000 people were basically displaced, ethnically cleansed. After the Kalingans have been conquered, beloved of the gods came to feel a strong inclination towards the Dharma, a love for the Dharma and for instructions in Dharma. Now, beloved of the gods feel deep remorse for having conquered the Kalingans. You can read about this in Ashoka Rock Edict number 30. So basically what happened after that is that Ashoka was so devastated after this violent conquest, he basically stopped, basically became a Buddhist. Like, he converted from Hinduism to Buddhism, right? And this is very shocking for many Hindus, because many Hindus cannot wrap their hands around why Ashoka would do that, right? Because he was like this massive, like glorious kind of like Hindu king, right? Why would he convert to Buddhism? The reason he converted to Buddhism is because the amount of violence he did is completely justified in Hinduism. But he was really sick of the killing of so many people. Like, just to imagine, like 100,000 people. That's like, if you put all of them in one location, like you can fill up an entire city with just dead bodies. That's how many people he killed. So he was really devastated by that. Like, he hated that. And because of that, he later on completely renounced violence and basically became a Buddhist. Now, the thing is that if you read kind of like Hindu texts, or whether it's the Mahabharata, whether it's the Ramayana, all these stories are stories of war. These are stories of war. So for someone to claim that Hinduism has nothing to do with violence is absurd. It's completely false. It's baseless. Now, the thing is that Hindus that claim that Hinduism is like a peaceful religion or a religion of peace, I want to ask them, like, are you saying that, Ashoka didn't have any Hindu priest in his court? Of course he did. As a matter of fact, the Hindu priests he had, or the Brahmins that he had, were way more knowledgeable than any Hindus living right now. Okay? Then why didn't he stop him? Like, why didn't these Hindus stop him? Why didn't these Hindus tell him that, hey, you know what? We shouldn't do this kind of like this level of violence against these kind of different empires, right? They didn't say that because it's completely justifiable in Hinduism. Like, just read Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna literally tells Arjuna why he should fight, why it is his duty to fight, like kill his brothers. Like, that's his duty as a Kshatriya, as a caste, as the warrior caste, right? He convinces him. Like, the whole debate is about him convincing Arjuna to kill his own family members. And there's like this whole context which I will get to in this live stream. But you guys should know that when people say that Hinduism has nothing to do with violence, it's completely false. Completely false. There's absolutely no way you can justify that position. But regardless, let's get back to reacting to the debate, and then we'll get back to it. All right. Start.
Face severe threats. We're forced into silence, and we're fearing for their lives. This climate of intimidation makes honest critical reform exceedingly difficult and perilous, adding to the risk it creates as it removes checks and balances. Contrast this with the general ethos within Hinduism. Hinduism is not a monolith. It's a vast ecosystem of spiritual traditions with a rich, complex history spanning millennia, far more ancient and varied than Islam. The term Hinduism is problematic as it has no historical equivalent and groups together extremely diverse collection of beliefs and practices. For this debate, I will take Hinduism to mean Astika. The term Astika means those traditions that accept the foundational authority of the Vedas. This shifts the debate away from what passes as Hinduism to what do the Vedas actually teach. Well, like any ancient tradition, it has complexities and, yes, instances where individuals or groups have acted violently. The foundational doctrines emphasize concepts like ahimsa as the highest dharma. Ahimsa is not naive pacifism. In the Vedic tradition, to stand up and do nothing while the innocent are attacked is itself considered a form of violence. An action can cause more harm than decisive, just intervention. When violence has occurred in a Hindu context, it can often be traced to human failings, political conflicts, societal issues, or decline in understanding and practice of true dharma, what the tradition itself terms adharma. These are.
So let's talk about ahimsa a bit. So basically, he says that, oh, we have the concept of ahimsa, right? Ahimsa is basically like this kind of like fight for like this righteous war. But the thing is that that's not what ahimsa means. Like again, like if you look at Mahabharata, all the wars that happened, none of them were not all of them were basically justified. As a matter of fact, a lot of them were not justified, right? For example, just look at the Kurukshetra war. So basically, to give you guys some context, the Kurukshetra war basically happened between two family members, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Kauravas were the actual legitimate heirs to the throne, and the Pandavas were basically kind of like these kind of like demigods that were basically bastards of like the queen that are not actually legitimate heirs to the throne. But of course, they were like kind of like these sons of these kind of like gods, if you will, and they had this conflict with like this kind of like these other cousins, Kauravas, and even when they were little, these kind of like these demigods who were basically bastards. That's not the actual child of the king. They would basically bully the human son of like the Kauravas. They would bully them, and then there were many conflicts. I'm not going to go into all of that. There's like this great audiobook on Mahabharata. You guys can check it out. I'll put the link in the comment section once the stream is done. But basically, the story is that there were at one point one of the Pandavas basically had started gambling with one of the Kauravas, and the Pandavas loses all his like belonging to the Kaurava, including his wife. Like basically, he bets his own wife in the game, right? And basically the Kauravas take the wife and kind of humiliates her, and they get really angry, and then they escape from the kingdom. And then at one point they decide they're gonna kill all their kind of like cousins and take back the throne. And it's hilarious because they don't deserve the throne. Like they're not actual legitimate heirs to the throne. So first of all, this itself is like an offensive war. This is not like a defensive war that they're fighting. This is not the case of like, oh, they're just like they're being attacked or whatever. No, they're going on the offensive against their own family members. And this is when like Krishna, who's like who's like a literal god in Hinduism, has a conversation with Arjuna, who is like one of the main Pandavas. So basically, Arjuna, when he was going to fight or kill his own family members, he had like this feeling of like, hey, I'm killing my own family members. I don't want to do this, right? And Krishna, get this Hindu god tells him, no, you have to fight. You have to kill your family members, right? So this is like this kind of like bizarre dichotomy, where the god who was supposed to put people on the right path is literally telling him that you should kill your family members because you want the throne, right? Where it should be the opposite, right? Because the gods are supposed to tell you, hey, you shouldn't kill all these people, kill your family members. But instead, he tells him to kill his family members. So this is nothing to do with peace. This is not peaceful. So ahimsa is not peaceful, right? So basically, ahimsa, if you look at the context, it's about fulfilling your duty. Is basically what it is. Fulfilling your duty, and if you can do it in a peaceful way, then great. If not, then it's in the path of violence. That's basically what ahimsa is, to me at least. So this kind of like interpretation of ahimsa, which is like complete non-violence, is not accurate. And I think he even pointed that. But like the way he's pointing to ahimsa as if like it's something unique to Hindus, it's not unique to Hinduism. Islam also has this kind of like concept of ahimsa. If we take this definition, where we don't seek out violence, but if violence comes to us, then of course we'll fight. So he's wrong on this. Brother Champions here, another mod. Welcome back, brother. Assalamualaikum, bro. Yeah, welcome to the stream. We're discussing Hinduism and violence in Hinduism, and we're reacting to the debate between Daniel and this Hindu apologist Arjuna. So yeah, as I was saying, so basically, this idea of ahimsa being this kind of like non-violence is not accurate. And we can see it. We can see the evidence of it in their own books. But regardless, let's continue, inshallah.
are viewed as deviations from the core teachings rather than actions directly commanded by widely accepted scripture mandating conquest or persecution in God's name. The Bhagavad Gita are universally...
Pleasure to see you, bro. Of course, bro. You too. Brother Doctor says, what do you think about Zoroastrianism, brother? To be honest, Zoroastrianism is kind of like a dead religion. Like, I don't know much about it, so I can really speak on it. But there's a lot of similarities between that and Islam, from what I understand. Can you do a debate review between Central and David Wood? I haven't seen that debate, but if I can, then yeah, sure. Inshallah, I'll check it out. All right, let's continue.
The revered text speaks of Krishna appearing whenever there is a decline in Dharma and a rise in Adharma to restore righteousness. This itself acknowledges that religious traditions can degrade, and such degradations are not representative of their core truth. Islam arose in a specific, turbulent historical context, a culture of warring tribes in 7th century Arabia. It united these tribes and embarked on an extraordinary path of rapid territorial expansion. It's not unreasonable to observe that its developing doctrine naturally incorporated elements that justify conquest, warfare, and subjugation, as these views were undeniably beneficial to a rapidly expanding state and empire. Doctrines like apostasy laws, jihad as territorial expansion, or dhimmitud for non-Muslims, a kind of institutionalized second-class status, are precisely the kind of dogmas a state seeking control and self-interest.
All right, so first of all, he's committing a logical fallacy here. It's known as quoting out of context. I have an animation for this. Give me a second. Let me bring it up. Quoting out of context. Do I have it here? Quoting out of context. It's a logical fallacy. All right, I'll add this, the animation for this, because it's a very common fallacy that many people commit. Let me see. A second. Yeah, there we go. Quoting out of context fallacy. Give it a few seconds. The animation is going to load. I want to show you guys what the actual logical fallacy is. There we go. Let's play this. Yeah. Context to me. So basically, the fallacy is that when you take something completely out of its kind of like historical context, it's basically a form of logical fallacy. Because when you take an incident out of kind of like this kind of like logical context, then the conclusion that it go to doesn't logically follow because it's out of the context, right? For example, imagine this, right? Imagine if I said that in the past, there were people who died of malaria, right? Therefore, I go to a conclusion that says that therefore people in the past were evil because they didn't give medicine to the people in the past to cure malaria. Now, the logical conclusion here doesn't follow. It's a false conclusion because the premise here is out of context, right? Because yes, back in the day, a lot of people died because of malaria, but they died because there is no medicine for malaria, right? So it's not their fault. So when you put the context back in, the conclusion doesn't logically follow. Therefore, it's a fallacy. Same thing here. Everything that is talking about, like the conquest and like this kind of like empires, like that's not the context of violence in Islamic history. Like, there's a whole massive context behind it. And if you read some of the history, it becomes obviously clear that Muslims were not seeking out violence. If anything, you have this kind of like massive empires. And back then, there was no concept of like this kind of like nation states, right? There's no defining border. So obviously, anytime a skirmish broke out, that means war, right? There's no way to kind of like peacefully negotiating things. Brother Champion says, there are very good reasons why early Muslims went to war and did conquest of the Middle Eastern land. Yeah, exactly. Number one, self-defense, spreading the message of Islam and obligations. Yeah. Also in Hinduism, you burn widows. This is such hypocrisy. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, and this is the thing, like when it comes to early Islamic history, you have to understand the context. Back then, tribalism was the context, right? So basically, there was no kind of like international law. So if you didn't like someone, you could just go to them and chop their heads off. Like that's how the rule was. So when you have situations like this, the only way you could protect yourself is when you were in a tribe, right? When you're in a tribe. This is why in Mecca and Medina, the community was tribal because they had to survive. So they survived together. And because of this, when the Prophet ﷺ came, he basically tried to bring all the tribes together. And Islam did bring all the tribes together. And when that happened, the same thing applied internationally, right? Because internationally, they also didn't care for Muslims, right, or the Arabs. So if they see the Arabs, they would kill them because there's no treaty there. Right? Like, what do you do at the situation, right? Like, you have no treaty with these people. You don't know who these people are. Now, of course, Prophet then sent out letters to give dawah to them. But of course, the inevitable conclusion was that there's going to be violence because these people are obviously looking for resources and they're going to fight. Because also, like, on what planet do you think that the Roman Empire, which is known for like bloodlust and absolute butchery, are going to like negotiate with Muslims? In no planet is that going to happen. Or the Persian Empire, because these are the strongest party, right? If they want to take the Arab lands by force, they can't take it by force. Like, there's nothing that the Arabs can do to stop them except violence, right? So there's like this massive context behind conflict with the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, because these were empires. So, and they didn't have, like, the Muslims didn't have any treaties with them. So of course there's gonna be violence. So this is like the basic gist of why there was like violence or conquest throughout that era, because there was no treaty there, and the Christians or the Zoroastrians refused to make treaties with the Muslims. Now, of course, later on they did make treaties, but I'm talking about initially, when the Muslims confronted these kind of like Christians and Jews, there was no treaty with them. Like, it's just like this land of kind of like warfare, because there's no border there. There's no like, there's nothing there. Like, there's no like UN or anything like that, right? So this is why there was so many violence, and it was necessary because they had to survive. So taking this and saying that, oh, these people are violent, there was a lot of violence in the past, therefore Islam teaches violence, is completely logically fallacious, because it doesn't logically follow, right? Now, Islam doesn't teach violence. Islam says that if, first of all, you should try to avoid violence, but if violence comes to you, then know that paradise is beneath the shade of swords, right? So that's the context here. But of course, he's not making sure what war he's talking about. He's not being specific. And Hinduism is full of violence history. For example, let me just quote you what Krishna said to Arjuna when Arjuna kind of like didn't want to fight. This is what Krishna said. Let's read. Let me bring this up. So basically, during the Kurukshetra battlefield, Arjuna, when he saw his own family members, he didn't want to fight. Let me share the screen. You guys want to know what I'm talking about. Here we go. There. No, sorry, not this one. Sorry about that. Here, it's in chapter 2, basically. Okay, here we go. So this is Arjuna speaking, right? So just to give you guys the context, basically Arjuna is basically facing his own family members in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? This is what Arjuna is saying. Arjuna said, "O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship?" So basically he's saying that I know these people, like I know them, like these are my teachers, these are like my family members. How can I kill them, right? That's what he's saying. Then he says, it would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dharashtra, we should not care to live, yet they are now standing before me on a battlefield. So basically Arjuna doesn't want to fight, right? He says that this is wrong, I don't want to fight. And then Krishna says the opposite. Here, let's continue reading. Now I'm confused about my duty to have lost all composure because of misery, weakness in this condition. I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. He's asking Krishna basically. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not. So basically, he says that he doesn't want to fight. He says he told Krishna, "Govinda, I shall not fight," and fell silent. O descendant of Bharata, at that time, Krishna, smiling in the midst of both armies, spoke the following. Then Krishna started saying this. The Supreme Personality of God has said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So he's saying that don't worry about your family members. This family member of yours, you should not feel bad for them, right? You should just kill them. Then he says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So basically, to explain what's going on, in Hinduism, what they believe is that once they die, their soul is basically reincarnated into another body, like a fish or like an animal or a tree. So basically, you become something else, right? And because you become something else, what Krishna is saying is that there is no time when the soul didn't exist. Like the soul always exists, right? Then he continues, as the embodied soul continues to continuously passes in the body from beyond the youth to old age, and the soul similarly passes into another body at death, a sober person is bewildered by such change. O son of Kunti, and their disappearance in due to course, and like appearance and disappearance in winter summer, they arise from sense perception. O citizen of Bharata, one must not learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that the non-existent material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal soul there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Then which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So basically what Krishna is saying is that basically, sure, you can kill the person's physical body, but their soul will still remain, right? Because their soul will remain, therefore they won't die. They won't really die. So it's okay to kill your family members. Like, this is absolutely disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. Can you imagine what he's even saying? He's literally saying that, look, these people, even if you kill their physical body, their soul will still be there, right? Therefore, you haven't really done any damage to them, right? So it's okay to kill them. Like, this is insane. So basically, this justifies any kind of killing. Like, you can kill anyone. You can kill a random innocent person, and that's fine because the soul will still remain and it will then be reincarnated into another body. Or you can just go around and just butchering everybody, and it doesn't matter because their souls is going to reincarnate into another body, right? That's a justification. Like, this is absurd. This is absurd. Our brother Champion says, also Christianity has apostasy law, and also Islam gives the apostates a certain amount of time to repent, and it's only for those who make huge commotion about the community. Sounds very just to me. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, this is like kind of like Krishna's kind of like justification for why he, like Arjuna, should kill his family members. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and the eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and he will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever exist, primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. That's his point. Like, that's literally his point. Like, the funny thing is that you could justify any kind of violence with this, right? Like, imagine if I said that, oh, you know what? I think I will kill my mother. Like, imagine if I said that, right? And then after killing my mother, so police catches me, right? And then says, well, why did you kill your mother, right? And then a psychopath could say that, oh, I did it because that's what Krishna said, right? Krishna said that, oh, if you kill if you kill a person, you're just destroying their body, but their soul still remains. So technically I didn't kill her, right? Like this is the kind of logic that they're bringing. So I don't know, man. Like this is this, and then this clown is saying that, oh, Hinduism is peaceful, guys. It's peaceful. No, like it's insane. And you can literally justify, like Krishna literally justified killing anyone. Like he justified killing anyone. So then, on what planet is this like peaceful? There's nothing peaceful about this. And then after that, Arjuna then like agrees with Krishna, and then he goes to kill all his family members. It was it was like a bloodbath. Like a lot of his family members were killed. And this is the context of the Kurukshetra war, which was devastating. It was a devastating violence. And this is why texts like the Bhagavad Gita, which is absolutely disgusting and horrible, because basically what Bhagavad Gita says is that you can kill anyone. It's completely fine because their their soul will still be alive, right? And it will just reincarnate into something else. Like this is disgusting. So this kind of like book of violence, right? And this is the kind of thing that justifies violence, because or violence against Muslims in India, because uh, because the thing is that with this you can justify anything. Like Hitler could read this and justify killing the Jews using this. As a matter of fact, many of the Nazis actually were very fond of kind of like Bhagavad Gita. They loved Bhagavad Gita. Brother Chamber sounds exactly like the opposite of peace. Yeah, exactly, exactly. This is the teaching of Krishna, and this is by the way, peace. No, this is not like some kind of abstract book. Bhagavad Gita is taken very seriously by Hindus, even the liberal Hindus. So no one can say that, oh, Hinduism has nothing to do with violence, guys. No, Krishna is literally saying, no, you can kill anyone. You can kill anyone. That is what he's saying essentially. So when people say that, oh, Hinduism is like has nothing to do with violence. No, Hinduism teaches violence. The difference with Islam is that Islam doesn't teach violence. As we just read from the hadith, which is in Sahih Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ said, do not seek out war, meaning do not look for war. But if war comes to you, then know that that paradise is beneath the shade of swords. Right? So this is the difference. The difference here is that the Prophet ﷺ told people to not engage in violence. However, Krishna is telling people to engage in violence. Like Krishna is telling them to kill innocent people in offensive warfare, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling people to not get involved in warfare if there are other options. Like this is the difference between the two religions, and this is the core aspects of the debate, right? Which is that Islam teaches that you shouldn't get involved in violence if there are other options, but Hinduism teaches that no, because it's your kind of like communal duty, because you're like this warrior caste, you have to get involved in violence, right? So one says that you have to get involved in violence. It doesn't matter. There doesn't need to be any justification. However, Islam says that no, you shouldn't get involved in violence if there are other options. But then, of course, if there are no other options, then that's fine. Like then there's no other option. You have to die fighting. So this is the difference between these two, right? And like this kind of like guy doesn't understand. But regardless, let's continue, inshallah.
Would find advantageous to integrate. While one might believe there are divinely inspired elements within Islam, it seems undeniable that a massive current of human ambition, political expediency, and strategic calculations are baked into the doctrine. Separating these harmful elements from elements that elevate people in God consciousness is what I'd like to see sincere Muslims work on, and how today's discussion can be beneficial. Let's move on to some examples of Islamic violence. A stark difference in scale and degree of violence between the Islamic world and the Hindu world exists in the kitchen. The halal meat market is estimated at the hundreds of billions of dollars annually, involving killing...
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention. So this is, by the way, another thing that I wanted to mention, which is that, so you guys just read the Bhagavad Gita, right? And how Krishna says that you can kill anyone because their soul will remain, right? This is the kind of justification that exists for violence in Hinduism. And because of this, when people like Ashoka, when he was a Hindu, when he went into this kind of like Kalinga war, which took like years, which killed nearly 100,000 people, obviously people like Ashoka will not feel comfortable with Hinduism. Because when he reads this Hindu text, he's justifying violence. But then when he looks at like Buddhism, It's more peaceful in that way. But I think if someone kind of like give dawah to Ashoka, I think he would have instead become a Muslim, because that's a perfect balance, right? But regardless, let's continue. Brother Champions, blogging theology made a ranking of violent religions. Atheism and Christianity were rated number 1 and 2. Hinduism was, I think, 3 or 4, and Islam was rated 6. It's just propaganda from the West. Yeah, if you look at if you look at like violence, in terms of violence, Hinduism is number 1. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Like the kind of like disgusting things that exist in Hinduism is just absolutely insane. Like in Hinduism, you can like literally, you have to literally kill your mother if your father dies. In widow burning, you have to like kill off. You can kill off like lower caste people without any kind of repercussion, right? If they like even look at you wrong, like if their shadow falls into your body, you can literally kill them. Like this kind of like disgusting violence like doesn't exist in Christianity, and it's very unique to Hinduism. So I don't think that Christianity is worse than Hinduism. Absolutely not. Like Hinduism is the absolute worst. So in terms of all the religion, Islam is a religion of violence. It's only something you hear from media in the West and the Hindutva. Yeah, the Hindutva are the same people who are basically saying, uh, who basically in their own religion, they're literal examples of human sacrifice. Like I'm not kidding. Like they are literal examples of human sacrifice. But regardless, let's continue.
Hundreds of millions of animals. This large-scale violence is primarily for the satisfaction of the tongue, as milk and vegetables are sufficient for nutrition and require no killing. This form of violence is shunned in Hinduism but encouraged in Islam. Muslims in the last 30 days alone have likely killed more cows than adherents to core Vedic principles ever have. While some Hindus do eat meat, this practice is not sanctioned by core Vedic teachings and represents a deviation, not adherence. Meat eating alone is enough to settle this debate, but there's more. Let's consider a couple of examples from the Hadith. If Daniel is to argue that Islam is inherently peaceful or less violent than Hinduism, he must cogently explain or indeed reject teachings such as these. Sahih al-Bukhari 6924, which states, I've been ordered by Allah to fight against the people until they testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And then Muhammad 24, which states, peaceful or less violent than Hinduism, he must cogently explain or indeed reject teachings such as these. Sahih al-Bukhari 6924, which states, I've been ordered by Allah to fight against the people until they testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that Muhammad is Allah's messenger. How is this not interpretable as a clear mandate for religious conquest and subjugation? And we have Sahih al-Bukhari 3017, which states,
Brother Champion says, Islam is a religion of something you hear from the media and the Western Hindutva. Bruh, moment, what's wrong with eating meat? Oh yeah, speaking of meat, I just cooked meat in the house. We are having meat right now. So, but anyway, so yeah, regarding meat, this is completely false. There are, if you read Mahabharata, there are countless examples of people like Arjuna, people like the Pandavas, going on hunting. They're hunting deers. Like there's a famous example of Pandu, who's like their father, uh, like hunting a deer. So this idea that you shouldn't eat meat in Hinduism is absolutely false. It's absolutely false. There's no basis for it. Like there are clear examples of like Pandavas eating meat, having fun, like and doing all kind of like there are many examples of eating meat in Hinduism. How is killing and eating animal violent? I don't think that's that's not violent. It's just how humans are. Yeah. Also, like this is false. Like in Hinduism, there are many examples of like Arjuna eating meat, kind of like they're kind of like brothers eating meat, like Pandu going on hunting and getting a deer, killing a deer. So this is false. This is just blatantly false. But regardless, continue.
whoever changes his religion, then kill him. This clearly provides doctrinal basis for lethal violence against apostates, a law tragically still on the books and even brutally enforced in several...
Oh, another thing. So he also mentioned this hadith, which says that I've been ordered to fight the disbelievers until they convert or something like that. Again, like the context is here again, is that Prophet ﷺ is basically saying that you should not again seek out warfare with the non-Muslims, right? He's been ordered to fight. Again, who is he fighting here? He's fighting the Roman and the Persian Empire. That's the context. Okay, he's fighting literally people that are trying to kill him, right? That's what he's talking about. However, in the Quran, it's obviously clear, which is that fight those who fight you, right? The Quran verse, the famous Quran verse that says, fight those who fight you. So it's not talking about fighting like innocent people. It's talking about killing like, killing people who are trying to kill you. But regardless,
Muslim majority countries today. These are not obscure fringe interpretations. These hadiths are foundational texts widely accepted within Sunni Islam and historically pivotal in shaping its legal and ethical framework. I would genuinely be delighted if Daniel were to stand up for a vision of moderate Islam that unequivocally rejects such literal calls to conquest and religiously sanctioned violence. The challenge for him then would be to confront the monumental implication that centuries of esteemed Islamic scholars and powerful Islamic states, which implemented and often glorified these teachings, were fundamentally wrong about their core, about their own religion. The critical question for him today is this violent, potential, and undeniable part of Islam's historical and doctrinal fabric, or is he prepared to declare a vast portion of its revered legacy a deviation? Next, I'd like to discuss theological components that underpin all religiously motivated violence and which feature prominently in certain interpretations of Islam. First is an exclusivist and binary worldview coupled with an unshakable conviction of absolute certainty. This thinking dictates that one possesses God's singular truth, the sole correct understanding of it, rendering anyone who disagrees an opponent of God himself. When a dominant religious doctrine built on such certainty posits an exclusivist path to salvation, condemning all others to eternal damnation for perceived theological errors, or simply adhering to a different tradition, it inevitably paints the portrait of the dying that is not merely lacking in good qualities, but that is bordering on psychopathic. This harsh binary us versus them, saved versus damned thinking, supercharged with absolute certainty, has historically.
Okay, so he says that, oh, Islam has like this kind of like violent teachings and whatnot. Oh, that's like psychopathic. Oh, that's hilarious, because let's take a look at some of the Hindu texts and what it says, right? Let's take a look at some of the Hindu texts. Okay, so here it's a story about Indra, and here Indra basically kind of like boasts about killing people and committing a huge amount of violence. Yeah, here we go. This is basically Indra speaking. Oh, I did not share the thing. Sorry about that. Here. Okay. Let me get a bit bigger. So this is in Upanishad. Upanishad Part 1, Chapter 3. I'll put the link in the comment section. You guys can read it yourself. So let's read. Then, however, Indra, by the way, Indra is this Hindu god of war, I believe. Then, however, Indra did not swear from the truth, for Indra is truth. Indra said to him, "Know me only, that is what I deem most beneficial for man, that he should know me. I slew the three-headed son of Tavistri." So he's boasting about killing all these people, right? "I delivered the Arunmukhas, the devotees, to the wolves." So he threw a bunch of people to the wolves, and he's praising about it. Like, imagine this. This is God speaking. Breaking many treaties. So here, Indra is literally saying, this supposed God, that he broke treaties. By the lovely content, it's gold, so underrated. Thanks, bro. I'm the only one watching. Hope you have a good job. Okay, just the channel is small, unfortunately. Yeah, thanks, bro. Anyway, so yeah, so basically Indra is saying that breaking many treaties. So basically here he's boasting about breaking treaties. By the way, please note, in warfare, in Islam, in Islamic law, breaking treaty is not allowed. It's not allowed. It's simply not allowed. So this is hilarious. "I killed the people of Prahilda in heaven." So he's talking about praising himself for killing these innocent people. "The people of Puluma in the sky, the people of Kalanga on earth." By the way, this is interesting. I think this is a reference to the Kalinga War, if I'm not mistaken. I remember the Kalinga War I mentioned. I think this is a reference to the Kalinga War, which saw the death of thousands of people. But anyway, "And not one hair of me was harmed there. And he who knows me thus, by no deed of his is his life harmed, not by the murder of his mother, not by the murder of his father. So look at what he's saying. And he who knows me thus, by no deed of his life is he harmed. So if someone like worships this kind of like this psychopathic Hindu god, nothing's gonna happen to him. Like even if he kills his own mother, like, that's literally what he's saying. And then this guy is coming here saying that, oh, there's no violence in Hinduism. Like seriously? But anyway, then there's this another story of like Indra killing a Brahmin who was hiding behind a woman, and then he was praising himself about it. So there's that story. You can read about that. Sorry, give me a second. You can read about it in here. What? It's not. That's not it. Oh yeah, it's in the same page. I'll share the link with you guys in the comment section. It's here. Yeah, it's in Rig Veda, where basically this Indra goes to this kind of like Namusi, who's like a Brahmin, a priest, a religious priest, and then he basically chops his head off. What will familiarly host Indra is supposed to say this: the two of his beloved depictions of Namusi by Indra is related to Gada section. Namusi fought through fear of Indra, took refuge in the solo race. So basically, this person was unarmed, right? And he didn't want to fight Indra. So he basically escaped him and was hiding. Then Indra promised that. So basically, Indra, this supposed Hindu god, is like a serial killer. he's going around hunting this kind of like this kind of like this Brahmin, right? Promised he would not harm him. And then at one point, he said he will not harm him if he comes out. Then this Brahmin, he comes out. Guess what he does? If he came forth, but he broke his promise, and on Namusi's issuing forth, cut off his head. So he literally tells him that, if you come out, I'm not gonna harm you. Then he comes out and he like chops his head off. Like this is the kind of gods that they worshipped, right? This is the kind of gods they worshipped. And then this guy is saying, oh, there's no violence in Hinduism, bro. There's no violence. Sure, seems like it. There are many examples of rishis who fought in war. You can read about this in Rig Veda. Yeah. And another thing is that, but anyway, I'm going to get to it later on. But anyway, let's continue. Let's continue the debate. Debate review. All right, let's go.
Historically fueled immense suffering and justified appalling acts of violence such as religious conquest, terrorist attacks, and eradicating or subjugating those considered to be on the wrong path. Second is the doctrine of holy war, the idea that the world is fundamentally divided into Darul Islam and Darul Harb, the realm of war and the realm of Islam. This leads to continuous obligation of believers to expand the former and combat the latter, not metaphor.
Yeah, by the way, this concept of Darul Harb and Darul Islam exists in all religion. All religion has this. Like even in liberal capitalist system, you have this, where you have these territories that are clearly under the protection and treaties of the United Nations. Then you have territories that are not, right? Like for example, North Korea. Like the United States can do anything in North Korea because it's not under another treaty of like the UN. So this, like, how is that different from like what we have in Islam, right? So if you don't have a treaty with this country, obviously, like, there's no need, like, you can do violence with that nation. So this is like a good example.
Metaphorically, but often literally, the hadith on being ordered to fight people until they submit aligns with this. This belief system can sanctify conquest, transforming military campaigns and acts of violence into sacred duties. Third is the potent belief in apocalyptic urgency, the conviction.
Now, again, then he said that, this hadith that says that, kill them until the hadith where the Prophet says that kill them until the land is conquered or whatever, right? He said that, this hadith can be used to kind of like cause this kind of like immense amount of violence. First of all, which is why in Islam we have commentaries, right? You have the scholars. Like you have to look at the context of what this statement is, and scholars have done the work. And the context here is that he's talking about enemies. He's talking about people who are waging war against Muslims or who are hostile to Muslims. People like the Romans or people like the Persians who are clearly hostile to the Muslims because they're expansionist empires. So they have to be fought. That's what he's talking about. So again, like this is like he does like a strawman argument fallacy, but regardless, continue.
That the end is nigh. This has repeatedly fueled religious violence, both in historical wars, with some fought for prophesied new order, and in modern terrorism aiming to trigger a divine cataclysm. For adherents, violence becomes cosmically significant.
Also, if you look at most of the examples of supposed terrorism or violence, none of them are influenced by religion or like Islam per se. Because if you look at, I don't know, like something like 9/11, it's a reaction to American imperialism. These are not acts of like proactive violence. These are like reactive violence. So here, the real problem is the American imperialism. It's not like the religion here itself.
A way to fulfill prophecy or participate in a final drama. This conviction breeds desperate urgency, justifying extreme actions as vital in what they perceive as humanity's last moments or a crucial divine turning point. These three beliefs, absolute binary thinking, the imperative of holy war, and apocalyptic urgency, when combined, form a potent ideological backbone for much religiously motivated violence associated with extremist Islam. When Christianity had violent periods, it displayed these three theological elements too. The fourth element is a fusion of...
Again, like he's talking about violence, like how do you explain the Kalinga War? Are you telling me that during the Kalinga War, which took the lives of 100,000 innocent people, like all these people, like these were killed by Hindus? Like why did the Hindus do this? Like, if Hinduism is supposed to be like this kind of like peaceful thing, like why is there so much dead bodies, right? Like why is like Indra going around chopping people's head off? Like why is the Mahabharata exist? Why is the Kurukshetra war exist? Like the thing is that if you're going to say that, oh, there's no justification of violence, then you have to renounce your own religion. But you're not going to renounce your own religion. And again, please note the difference here is that in Islam, there's nothing in Islam that says that you should go around killing innocent people. That doesn't exist. However, in Hinduism, it does exist because Krishna himself says that in Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, regardless, let's continue.
with extremist Islam. When Christianity had violent periods, it displayed these three theological elements too. The fourth element is a fusion of religious and state power. This unity means theological disputes cannot remain peaceful schisms.
Hello?
Control of the state becomes essential to assert theological dominance. The devastating Sunni-Shia civil war, for instance, was not a mere doctrinal parting of ways because Islamic theology and politics were so deeply intertwined. Theological supremacy required governmental control, inevitably leading to war. The violent...
Also, like he oftentimes like mischaracterize what's happening in Islamic history. He's talking about Shia Sunni war. Like, what's the context of that? Again, like he's committing the quoting on a context fallacy. Like all this like warfare happened because of political reasons. It didn't happen because of religion. Here is he's again quoting on a context. So if you look at all this kind of like conflict he's talking about, this happened because of because of political reasons, not because of some religious reasons. And if you think they happen because of religious reasons, then show us evidence. But you can't show us evidence because it doesn't exist. There's another thing I want to show you guys. Let me see. There is this list of because this is another example that they use, right? Here we go. So let me show you guys something. Yeah, hold on. Let me show it to you guys. Stop screen. Share. I showed this in my previous kind of like video, but I feel like it's important that people sees this. So this is like, by the way, this is like a list of all the terrorist group that exist in India. Look at all this list. By the way, a huge chunk of this list is not Muslim terrorists. These are all mostly non-Muslim terrorists. Look at all this. So can someone explain, if Hinduism is supposed to be such a peaceful religion, why does so many kind of like insurgency groups exist or terrorist groups exist in India? But anyway, let's continue.
Repercussions of this fusion and the specific centurion conflicts tragically persist today. Now let's turn to specific historical examples. These early Islamic conquests from the Rashidun Caliphate onwards were explicitly framed as opening lands for Islam. Armies marched under Islamic banners from the Middle East across North Africa into Spain and eastwards to...
Yeah, armies marched. Why did they march? Like, what was the reason for it? They marched because there was a war. That's why they marched. And what was their war? Because there is no treaty. That's what happens.
Persia and India. The destruction of indigenous people's religious sites, like Mahmud Ghazna's invasion of India, where he prided himself on smashing idols and desecrating temples, was not incidental but a celebrated part of these campaigns, often presented as a religious duty to eradicate polytheism. This pattern continued for centuries. The Ottoman Empire's expansion into Europe, its system of the boy level, the jizya...
By the way, this is hilarious. He's talking about kind of like why Muslim armies destroy temples. Hindus did the exact same thing. Again, like, are you saying that during the warfare of like the Kalinga War or like all these kind of Indian wars that happened, no temples were destroyed? Really? Because the thing is that, I don't know if you guys know, India for the most part was like was a hub of Buddhism. Like, there was a lot of Buddhist temples in India that were completely destroyed by these Hindu kings. So this idea that, oh, you know, like there's no like violence or destruction of temples by Hindus. No, clearly there was. Regardless.
Attacks on non-Muslims and instances of forced conversions were not random acts, but part of systemic, religiously justified imperial policy. Compare this with Hindu history. There's no parallel for such widespread, theologically mandated religious conquest. While Hindu empires like the Cholas engaged in warfare and expanded influence, their campaigns were primarily for political...
Wait, did he actually say that there's no example of such conquest in Hinduism? What is he talking about? Like, how did the Mauryan Empire expand so much? Like, how do you think the Mauryan Empire gained so much territory? Like what? Like the other people just gave them their land for free? Hey, you know, this Hindu king comes and they're like, oh, here, have our land. Like, is that what happened? Or did they take it by conquest? Of course, they took it by conquest. So this is ridiculous. Like, how do you think like all these kind of like Hindu kings or like in Hindu mythology epics, or you have this Kurukshetra war, or like you... By the way, the Kurukshetra war was about war of succession. It was about taking over this land, Hastinapur, right? So if this is the case that, oh, you know, taking over a land with violent means is wrong, then your own gods are wrong. Your own kind of like this kind of demigod figures are wrong. Your Krishna is wrong, but your Krishna was completely fine with this. So if your God was fine with this, then why is it wrong? Subhanallah.
Political and economic power, not forcible conversion or imposing...
I guess this message of non-violence didn't reach Krishna's ear. Their own God doesn't know about this principle of non-violence. Only he knows.
Vedic ritual. Hindu culture and Vedic ideas spread to Southeast Asia, primarily through trade, philosophical exchange, and cultural attraction. Soft power, not systemic military subjugation. This systemic, theologically driven violence isn't merely a relic of ancient history. Consider modern Islamic extremism in the West, a consistent pattern of knife attacks, bombings, car rammings, often by individuals shouting religious slogans, claiming to act in Islam's name, citing doctrinal justifications. Think of tragic attacks such as in Paris, London, Manchester, and...
Again, like he's using the logic of fallacy, quoting on the context. Most of these terrorist attacks are a response to imperialism, or like it's kind of like Western imperialism. I'm not saying that terrorism is justified, but the point is that a lot of them are response to brutal violence from the colonial empires, like the British Empire, like the American Empire that exists right now, or the Israelis, right? And all their kind of endless violence causes this kind of like insurgent groups or terrorist groups to act violently to try to protect their people, right? And this is a natural reaction. So the violence, the supposed violence, is taken out of context, because they are reacting to more violence, right? More violence from a country like the United States or like the NATO. They're bombing their kind of like cities and territories. So of course they're going to react violently. So these are not examples of like proactive violence. These are examples of reactive violence. And the reactive violence, although still bad, is not as bad as proactive violence, like the violence of the United States or the violence of Israel, because these are proactive violence. They took steps to violently kill people, which resulted in the people in the territory to be more violent. So the two things are not the same. And also this cannot be used as a justification for why Islam is violent, because that has nothing to do with Islam, right? This is more political in nature.
Elsewhere, while most Muslims are peaceful, the fact that substantial minority
Also, like then he says that all these terrorist groups are from like Muslims. No, there are countless Hindu terrorist groups. Okay, let me show you guys an examples of this. In India, for example, there are countless terrorist groups that are not Muslim. Like this is actually a list of all the terrorist groups or extremist groups in India. Look at them. A huge chunk of them are not Muslim. You have this kind of like National Security of Council of Nagaland, National Socialist Council of Nagaland, or like this kind of like United Liberation Front of Assam, UEFA, all these kind of like terrorist groups, and most of them are not Islamist. A huge chunk of them are not actually, right? You have the Kangala Communist Party. So yeah, so this is false. You have many examples of terrorism from non-Muslim side. So to say that, Muslims are the one who's involved in terrorism is false.
in some Western populations reportedly sympathize with the motives behind such violence indicates a deeper ideological problem, not just a few deranged individuals. There's no comparable wave of religiously motivated Hindu terrorism globally targeting civilians in foreign lands in Dharma's name. Furthermore, look at ongoing conflicts like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and militias like Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Nigeria explicitly frame their brutal campaigns as jihad. They aim to establish states.
Again, this is false. Like, look at 2002 Gujarat massacre. Like, what do you think the Hindutva extremists that were butchering all these Muslims? What do you think they did that? If not for Hinduism? Yeah, I wonder.
Governed by strict interpretation of Sharia, employing extreme violence against opponents, including fellow Muslims. This is not just political, it is deeply theological for these groups, filling divine.
Again, he showed no connection for how it's related to theology. He's just showing examples of random violence that has nothing to do with religion. Like, where's the evidence that Islam prescribes this kind of violence? Where's the evidence for this? Again, it doesn't exist. Because Islam doesn't prescribe this kind of violence. Islam says that if you can avoid violence, then do so, but if you cannot avoid it, then fight. Here, in every single one of these cases, you have a situation of reactive violence, not proactive violence, where people, countries like America are coming into this kind of like Muslim lands, or Israel coming into this Muslim land and killing Muslims. So what are the local people supposed to do? Just sit back and just give them flowers? No, this is examples of reactive violence, which I'm not saying it's justifiable, but there is a logical reason for it's there. But the proactive violence is the thing that's the worst thing here, right? Because, like, for example, Israel has no justification for why it's taking land from the Palestinians. No proper logical justification. And they justify it using their own religion. But the Muslims are simply defending their territory. So, like, even with this like whole thing, he's completely strawmanning what's actually happening here, and then attacking that instead of what's actually going on, which is that Muslims are forced to fight because they're being attacked in many of these cases. So again, like, this doesn't prove that somehow Islam is, encouraging people to do violence. Rather, this is more of an example of people reacting to huge amount of violence, and maybe using religion to do so. But there's no evidence that this has anything to do with Islam, because Islam doesn't say that you can kill innocent people.
Commands, perceived divine commands. To summarize the core distinctions, violence in relation to Islam is often shows a pattern that it's systemic, enduring, and ideologically motivated, and it's expansionist. Violence in relation to Hinduism tends to be local, episodic, and the result of human fallibility, not doctrinally motivated. My opponent, Daniel, if he wishes to contend Islam is less violent than Hinduism, must not only condemn groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but also grapple with early caliphate conquests, apostasy, and blasphemy laws, and the hadiths I've mentioned. He needs to explain how these are not legitimate expressions of Islamic doctrine, and why, if distortions, so many Muslims historically and today embrace them as authentic. He must also account for why Hinduism never produced a comparable global apparatus for religiously mandated conquest.
Hinduism did do that. Look at all the wars that happened in India. Every single one of them had Hindu priests backing them, right? Whether it's the Kalinga Wars or like, actually, let's take a look at this. List of all the most violent wars in ancient India. Firearms. A second, let me take a look at. So there are many examples of like this kind of like violent warfare in India. For example, obviously Kalinga War is one of them, but there are also others. Um, Give me a second. Yeah, so basically, for example, you can look at all these wars, like for example, the conquest of Magda by Bimbasara, the conquest of Vatsa Magda War, the invasion of Nanda Maurya War, the war that happened between the Nanda kingdom and the Maurya kingdom, conquest of Kalinga, battle of Patipura, which is another a battle that happened under the Mauryan Empire, Meghdad War, and secluded Mauryan Empire. So there are countless examples of this kind of like violent conquest. So to say that, oh, there is no example of warfare, it's obviously false. But regardless, let's continue.
A compelling case is made that these pervasive violent interpretations and the core theological tenets that fuel them are entirely alien to 14 centuries of mainstream Islamic thought and practice. And until we see widespread authoritative...
By the way, he showed no examples of how this is justified under Islam or Islamic law. So what he's doing is basically a straw man. He's saying Islam is saying something when in reality he showed no evidence of this.
And effective reform repudiating these interpretations and problematic tenets from within Islam's highest echelons, the evidence I submit overwhelmingly supports the proposition that Islam, as a doctrine and historical force whose claims can be seen to permit persecution rather than universally inspire peace, has been and continues to be associated with a significantly greater degree of systemic, ideologically justified violence than Hinduism. Thank you.
By the way, he actually went off topic here because the topic isn't which religion caused violence, more violence. The topic is which religion is more violent, right? So you have to give an example of which religious text has more violent teachings, not that which religion has more people who are more violent. Like that's not the topic. So he completely went off topic, and now Daniel is gonna cook him.
Thank you very much for that opening statement from Arjuna, who, as I had mentioned earlier, is arguing, of course, that Islam is more dangerous. I want to remind you folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, Dr. James Coons. We are a fully neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome, no matter what walk of life you're from, Christian, Muslim, atheist, Hindu, you name it. Hit that subscribe button as we have many more debates coming up. In fact, possibly one in Las Vegas, in person, this July, with a provocative speaker named Daniel. He doesn't even know it yet, but it's going to be a tremendous debate. But anyway, we're going to kick it over to Daniel now for his opening, as he's arguing that Hinduism is the more violent or dangerous religion. Thank you very much. Daniel, the floor is all yours for your opening statement.
Can I just share my screen, James?
Yeah, ready for you.
So Las Vegas, wow, that's exciting.
Tremendous city, a big, beautiful city.
Okay, let's see. Can you see my
yes,
presentation?
Crystal clear.
Also, another thing is that, let me share something with you. Yeah, so basically he said, oh, Hinduism doesn't produce this kind of like terrorist attack. Let's look at all the examples of violence against Muslims in India, because most of the cases, many cases, these are done by Hindus against Muslims. For example, there's the 1987 Hashimpura massacre, the Hindu Muslim riots, they're mostly done by Hindus. 1989 Bhagalpur violence. In Bhagalpur, it is estimated that nearly 1,000 people lost their lives in violent attacks, believed to be the result of tensions raised over the Ayodhya dispute and the process carried out by the VHP activists, which would be to show the strength and to serve as a warning to the minority communities, again done by Hindus. You have the 1992 Bombay riots. This, by the way, is very famous violent examples of Hindus killing Muslims, where the destruction of the Babri Mosque by Hindu nationalists directly led to a riot or protest about Hindu magazine. Officially, 900 people were killed. Again, thousands of Muslims were killed. Thousands were injured. By 2000, nearly 2,000 were injured, and 900 were killed. Gujarat riots, which I just made a video on, nearly 2,000 people were killed directly under the instructions of Narendra Modi. Again, if you want details, check out my previous video. Then here the 2013 Muzaffarnagar riots, which happened in 2013 between Hindu Muslims. These riots resulted in 62 deaths, including 42 Muslims and 20 Hindus. 200. So yeah, again, the attack was done on Muslims. 2020 Delhi riots. Oh, sorry. Here. 2020 Delhi riots. The 2020 Delhi riots left more than 53 dead, 100 injured, including both Indian Muslims, were triggered by protest against citizenship law, seen by many critics as anti-Muslim. So again, this was basically there's a law passed that was anti-Muslim. They protest, and then they basically kill the Muslims. So yeah, so when he says that, oh, this is nothing to do with like, Hinduism doesn't produce terrorism. No, it clearly does. But anyway, so let me go back to the thing. Okay, we have a comment here. Haqiqatjou is okay. I'll just call him Daniel because I don't care. That's not the topic of the video, because the thing is that if you wanna go around telling people deviants and not listen to them and whatnot, like that has nothing to do with my live stream, because in order to refute enemies of Islam, we can use anybody. We could use Daniel. We could use even non-Muslims. We could use Bert Ehrman's argument against Hinduism, or his arguments against Christianity. Same way we can use Daniel's argument against Christianity. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything he says. So this debate review is simply me reviewing his debate with like this kind of like this Hindu clown, who are our enemy, right? Like these kind of like Hindu apologists who are trying to advocate for paganism. They're advocating something evil. So like I don't see how saying that Daniel is quote unquote this and that is relevant for this. Real, let's continue.
Okay, I just give me 1 second to bring up my notes.
You got it. In the meantime, folks, don't forget to hit that like button. We do appreciate your support, and we'll have Q&A at the end, so if you happen to have questions, you can submit them by either tagging me in the live chat with @ModernDayDebate. Otherwise, you can do a super chat, as those questions will be read first in the order that they come in. With that, we'll kick it over to Daniel.
Okay, starting now. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. As war has broken out between Pakistan and India, many are asking, which is more violent, Islam or Hinduism? The main criticism that modern Hindus have against Islam is that Islam uses unacceptable violence because it endorses conquest and the forceful imposition of religious beliefs, whereas Hinduism rejects these things. As a Muslim, I readily accept that Islam endorses conquest and the use of force to impose beliefs and norms. But so do all major religions and cultures, including modern Western liberalism. I've argued this in many, many, many debates. Traditional Hinduism...
Yeah, exactly. Like, show me one religion on earth that doesn't have conquest or like this kind of like violence. The difference here is that Islam doesn't say that you should go around like do violence. Rather, Islam says that you should avoid violence, but if violence comes to you, then you fight. So, no, like Islam is not Islam doesn't teach violence like other religions. But in other religions, the teaching is basically that you should do violence, where Islam teaches that no, you should not do violence. This is why Islam is not a violent religion, unlike the other religions.
Hinduism also supports conquest and domination to impose beliefs. But violence in Hinduism is especially objectionable for two reasons. First, it promotes beliefs and norms that are objectively more repulsive than those of other religions, such as sex rituals with dead horses, worship of racist gods by rubbing their penises, widow burning, child temple prostitution, human sacrifice, and more. Secondly, unlike Islam, Hindu violence is rooted in racial subjugation. Hinduism teaches that light-skinned upper castes must dominate dark-skinned lower castes and force them to live under a brutal apartheid system. Now I'll debunk 4 myths about Hinduism and violence. Hindu myth number 1, Hindus are indigenous to India. This is false. No human population today is truly indigenous to its current region. Groups have migrated, mixed, and replaced one another throughout history, and India is no exception. Contrary to Hindu nationalist claims, DNA evidence shows that today's Indian population is genetically distinct from the ancient peoples who once inhabited the region. In fact, the DNA evidence shows that in the Bronze Age, about 3,500 years ago, there was a massive migration of Central Asian Aryans into northern India. This is called the Aryan invasion, and in just the past...
By the way, many Hindus will object to this. They'll say that, oh, this is false. This is like a false theory and whatnot. This is false. Like there are many evidences of the Aryan invasion happening, and this is well established in academia. As a matter of fact, you can even see this in real life in India. For example, there are certain areas in India, like for example, if you go to south, some communities still exist, and they still has been able to protect their own identity. Where if you look at other places in the world, there's been a lot of mixing and intermixing, but that didn't happen in India. And many scientists basically look at that and kind of try to find why that happened. And one of the explanation is that because of the caste system, and because of many of these people were actually wiped out, and they were not allowed to breed with these other people. So, so this is actually a very kind of controversial topic for many Hindus. But the Aryan invasion did happen. And the reason why it's controversial is because many Hindutvas actually claim that Hindus are basically native to the land, but because there has been DNA evidence that shows otherwise, this actually throws a monkey wrench in their theory. But because this actually shows that Indians are actually not native to the land, they actually came from outside. This also proves why Hinduism is false, because Hinduism claims that kind of India was like this land of gods, where the gods basically created this kind of holy land. But the thing is that that's not true because people simply migrated here, right? It's not the case that there were these kind of gods and that they created this kind of utopia where there's this first man. When in reality, if you look at the scientific data, people migrated here. So Brother K is back. He says, this was the nail in the coffin for me. Yeah, exactly. And there are many evidences for why migration happened. I honestly thought that Hinduism was native. It's not. Definitely not. If you look at the previous proto-Hinduism religions, there are many religions that actually exist before Hinduism here, that kind of morphed into being what we know as dharma or this kind of these religious practices. But the reality is that many of these practices came from outside, that didn't actually exist in this territory. But regardless, let's continue.
Last decade, new paleogenetic data has established it as an indisputable scientific fact. Paleogenetics collects and analyzes DNA samples from contemporary populations as well as the human remains of ancient peoples. By doing a genetic analysis, scientists draw conclusions about how populations have migrated and mixed. Before genetic evidence, scholars debated whether Aryans invaded India or if indigenous Indians migrated outward. Hindu nationalists like M.S. Goldwalker claimed Hinduism was native to India, unlike Islam, which they said arrived via 11th century invasions. But paleogenetics now confirms that Hinduism too came to India through invasion. The genetic data that establishes this is found in the landmark paper, The Genomic Formation of South and Central.
The paper he cites, Brother K said, honestly, 99% of Hindus are Hindu because of this. They will cry once we start actually using this argument, because now Islam is clearly less violent. I have way more reason to hate Hinduism now. Yeah. Because now Islam is clearly less violent. Yeah, because the thing is that this is one of the reasons why they are actually Hindu in the first place. You're right, which is that many of them will say that, oh, our forefathers, lived here. This is our ancient kind of ancestral homeland, right? We belong here, and this kind of invaders, these Muslim invaders, they came. But obviously, that's false. You yourself are the lineage of invaders, these Aryan invaders that came here, that clearly came here. and it's in your DNA. Like, it's not like you can like deny it, right? So this story that the Hindus have is that we are native to the land, but the Muslims are the foreigners. It's completely false because the DNA say otherwise, right? And the thing is that, like, even if you want to claim that, it's a very stupid way to argue that why Hinduism should be maintained, because that's nothing to do with if Hinduism is true or false. I mean, like, Hinduism is false because it leads to contradiction. There cannot be more than one God. But if you're going to claim that, oh, our ancestors followed this religion, no, they didn't. They migrated from other places. So it's not like your land was made by these gods, right? Anyway, let's continue.
Central Asia, co-authored by Harvard Medical School professor David Reich and 92 other leading scholars of genetics and history. A news report summarized the findings thus: the thorniest, most fought-over question in Indian history is slowly but surely getting answered. Did Indo-European language speakers who call themselves Aryans stream into India sometime around 2000 BC to 1500 BC when the Indus Valley civilization came to an end, bringing with them Sanskrit and a distinctive set of cultural practices? Genetic research based on an avalanche of new DNA evidence is making scientists around the world converge on an unambiguous answer: yes, they did. Here is a list of the most important peer-reviewed scientific papers establishing that the Aryan invasion of India is a historical reality. Hindu myth number 2. Unlike Muslims, Hindus never...
Brother K said, also Hindus genocided the people. Yeah, I mean, like, this is clearly evident from if you look at the paleogenetic, like, data. Hold on, let me share with you guys the actual data that was quoted by Daniel here, because I think it's important that we show you guys this. Not going to take too long. So basically, this is one of the papers that Daniel actually cited, and I didn't know about this, but this is actually very interesting data. So it's a research paper that's done by, it's loading still. Let's continue listening to Daniel. Then I'm going to get back to it once the paper is loaded. Let's continue.
Engage in violent conquest. This is also false. There are at least 3 major examples of historical Hindu conquest we can point to. First is the initial conquest by the Aryans around 2000 BCE, which was established by the genetic evidence mentioned before. The invading Aryans destroyed the Indus Valley civilization and replaced it with the proto-Hindu culture and religion. This meant imposing a brutal caste system on the existing Dravidian population. The second...
Yeah, by the way, the evidence of Dravidians existing, something that's in the DNA. Like, you can't deny this. Like, these people doesn't exist anymore. That's the funny part. Right, so clearly these people at one point existed, but because there's no evidence of this, but they only exist in your DNA, it shows that your lineage of these people, but these people itself no longer exist. So it's not something you can deny. You'll notice that there are many native Muslim empires from South Asia, but the Hindu ones are mainly coming from top-down. Look up Dastinius. Yeah, exactly. I think the difference between Hinduism and Islam is that Islam, if you look at Islam, although Islam did conquer areas, but if you look at most Muslims, they converted. Like, many of them converted, even with Hinduism. Like, if you look at Muslims around like Bangladesh and whatnot, many of them converted because they are lower caste people, right? And they can actually trace back their lineage back to the ancestor, right? But when it comes to Hindus, many of them actually came from up top on these kind of like different areas. So yeah, anyway, let's continue. Sure.
An example of violent Hindu conquest is the Maurya Empire, which lasted between 322 and 187 BCE. The Maurya Empire was the first Hindu empire which conquered all the lands that are considered India today. The third example of Hindu conquest is the Gupta Empire, which lasted from 240 CE to 579 CE. They also started in northern India and conquered southern India, spreading Hinduism throughout the subcontinent. These aren't the only examples of Hindu conquest, but unlike civilizations like the Romans, Chinese, or Muslims, Hindus didn't carefully document history. As a result, large gaps exist in the Hindu historical timeline, but as we've seen, paleogenetics helps fill those gaps. Also, religious texts highlight the role of violent...
Also, another reason you can tell that a lot of these invasions happen is from the Hindu text itself. Like, for example, there's a mention of this kind of like massive war that happened in Hindu mythology. I think it's mentioned in Mahabharata itself, which is like they call the War of the 10 Kings. And this is a massive war that happened in kind of like that's mentioned in Mahabharata. And a lot of the places that was mentioned in Mahabharata actually existed historically. So we know that something like this war happened, because otherwise, like, why mention this? So there may be some element of truth of this warfare happening in India in ancient times. So we know this kind of like there was like this invasion that happened, and there's evidence of this, even their own scriptures. But regardless, let's continue.
conquest in Hinduism. In the Rig Veda, dating to the Aryan invasion era, the warrior god Indra leads white-skinned Aryans to destroy the dark-skinned Dasa. Indra isn't the only warrior god. There's also Skanda, Durga, Rama, Krishna, and Hanuman, the warrior monkey. Hindu gods commit violence beyond war, however. Brahma chases down and rapes his own daughter. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva gang rape someone's wife. Krishna beheads people, kills an elephant, and murders its owner with the tusk. Kali is depicted with severed heads as earrings and a skull necklace. In the caste system, the Kshatriya caste exists solely for war, as emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita describes how Prince Arjuna hesitates to fight, but Krishna tells him he must kill. It's his caste duty. The Mahabharata, in fact, glorifies a war that kills 1.6 billion people. Such massive death tolls are justified because warriors go to heaven, where they are rewarded with beautiful maidens called apsaras. Hindu apologists claim the warrior caste, however, only fights defensive wars, but Hindu texts disprove this by teaching the Chakravartin ideal. The Oxford Reference Dictionary defines Chakravartin as the ideal king divinely ordained to restore temple.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of which, like the kind of like Kurukshetra war itself is not like a defensive war, it's an offensive war. Like the Pandavas were not going on defensive, they were actually going on the offensive. They're trying to take the throne from the Kauravas. So even on the onset, that's just false. Brother Fahad, have you made anyone Muslim? If you mean if someone converted through me, then no. Sadly, I haven't had the opportunity to do that. But there have been many people who have said that my videos have helped them come back to Islam, like people who are having doubts and whatnot. And I'm kind of proud of that. But alhamdulillah, all thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, these gods are so intuitively wrong. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's continue, inshallah. Yeah, let's continue.
Temporal dharma by ruling the entire earth. The Mahabharata describes him as reducing to subjection all kings of the earth. The Manusmriti also says the Kshatriya king's dharma is to conquer as much land as possible and take women as war booty. Whatever a man wins, chariot, horse, elephant, parasol, money, grain, livestock, women, all goods and base metal, all that belongs to him. The whole world stands in awe of the man who...
Yeah, speaking of which, like when it comes to Hinduism, there are laws in like in the Brahmin tradition, but basically if a lower caste person, this is funny, I'm gonna show you guys the evidence of this. There's this story of if a lower caste people basically wipes the butt of this higher caste person, they're gonna get rewarded in heaven for this. So if you wipe the butt of like this kind of Brahmins, this kind of like rich high caste Brahmins, you're gonna get rewarded for this. This kind of like nonsense exists. Well, says, what do you think about Saudi teens? Also, your video helped me too. When you were Islamic Defense Channel, I think that was cool. I think it's no worries about it. Hold on, I think I found the paper. Okay, let me share this paper that Daniel just shared. I think this is interesting because Daniel doesn't read it in detail. But here, if you read it in detail, here what it says. Let me see. Here we go. So basically, it says, make it a bit bigger. There we go. All right. So basically, this is a paper that's it's a peer-reviewed paper by on BMC. Genetic chronology for the Indian subcontinent points to heavily sex-biased dispersals. So basically what this paper shows is that if you look at the DNA of Indians, many Indians, you will see that there's a sex bias, meaning if you look at the female DNA, the female DNA basically matches with the local people that exist at that area. However, if you look at the male DNA, the male DNA actually comes from distant places, right? So the female DNA is local, but the male DNA is not. So the question is, what happened to the local male DNA, right? They're just missing, they're just gone. Like the local female DNA exists, but not the local male DNA, right? And from this theory emerged, which is that what basically the male population in India, a huge chunk of them were either killed off by kind of like disease or they're killed off by war, right? Basically, they were killed off by warfare. And this kind of like these invaders took the woman of the local population. That's why the woman of the local population DNA still exists, but the kind of like the DNA of the male population doesn't exist, right? So basically, that's the explanation that the paper provides. But okay, so it was so funny watching this debate. I'm glad you're doing a review. Hindus' only advantage was the obscurity of the religion. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so if you look at the at one point, the authors of the paper, which is basically it's like a peer-reviewed paper. One of the scientists, paleontologists, they say, here it is clear from our analysis that there is a very strong sex bias in the ancestry of South Asians. The female line of descent is mostly endogenous, meaning local, and traces back to the first settlement. However, the male line of the descent emphasizes a more recent ancestry, since the LGM from Southeast Asia and Central Asia. Yeah, so basically, the male DNA is coming from the Southeast Asia and Central Asia, but the female DNA is kind of like this endocoleus or like local, right? So you have the female DNA is local, but the male DNA is coming from distant places. So this proves that basically the local male population were basically wiped out. So that's the evidence of that. Because there's no other way to explain this. But regardless, let's continue, inshallah. And this data basically proves that what Daniel is saying, which is that the male population was basically wiped out. Now, someone could argue, well, isn't it possible that maybe there was like this disease or whatever that wiped them out? But there's no evidence of that. Like, there's no evidence of disease, but there is evidence of like warfare and violence. Even if you look at their own like religious text or like historical text, they're clear examples of violence. So it's more likely that these people were wiped out by these invaders, and their women were taken. And that's what happened. This is why this relates credence to the Aryan invasion theory. But regardless, let's continue.
Who keeps his military force in constant readiness, it is with military force, therefore, that he should subdue all creatures. Again, the idea of conquering the world and taking female slaves exists in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and Hinduism is no exception. What sets Hinduism apart is using this violence to enforce a racial caste system and norms like dead horse sex, widow burning, and the worship of racist, rapist gods. Hindu myth number 3, Hinduism does not impose beliefs on others, and caste is voluntary. This is also false. It's true that Hindus do not impose one set of beliefs because Hinduism does not contain one creed. Hindus can be polytheists, henotheists, monists, animists, etc. Unlike Islam, Hinduism does not emphasize correct creed, but Hinduism does emphasize and impose caste duty or dharma. Caste systems are widespread across history and geography, not unique to India. They appear wherever dominant groups create rigid social hierarchies to maintain power.
One of the things you need to understand about caste system is that it still exists in India, and so like this is very embarrassing for many Hindus or like Hindutvas, because like they cannot justify this and under any circumstances. So and one of the main reasons why many people leave Hinduism is because of this kind of like caste system, because there's no justification for this.
Spanish implemented the casta system in Latin America and the Philippines. The Dutch did so in South Africa and Indonesia. The Hindu caste system, or Varna system, Varna meaning color, is described in the Rig Veda. The elite Aryan Brahmins come from the mouth of the god Purusha. The Kshatriya warriors from the arms, Vaishya.
By the way, one thing you didn't know, this chart that Daniel is showing is actually in the Vedas itself, Upanishads itself, sorry. And Upanishad is one of the most important texts in Hinduism, so they cannot deny this.
Peasants and merchants from the legs, and dark-skinned Shudra laborers from the feet. Hindu texts outline strict rules for each caste. The lowest castes, dark-skinned Shudras and Dalits, suffered the most torment under caste oppression. Here's a brief overview of just some of the caste rules. First, lower castes cannot read the Vedas or enter temples. They cannot own property. They must serve the upper caste as slaves. They are mutilated and castrated for not being servile enough. They should have insulting names which reflect their low and servile status. They are castrated and killed for lying with upper caste women. Higher castes cannot speak with or physically contact members of the lower castes. There must also be no sharing of food or water with the lower castes because they're impure. Hinduism permits human sacrifice, and the sacrifice.
By the way, before we go to human sacrifice, I want to share some of these kind of text with you. So, for example, one of the most common things is that Shudras, or the lower caste people, are actually black, right? So in Hinduism, the lower caste people are described as being black people. So let me show you guys some evidence of this, so you guys know what I'm talking about. So it's in Mahabharata 188. It says, yeah, there we go. Let me share this. We'll take a second. Don't leave. All right. Here. It says, it's in Mahabharata, the complexion of the Brahmins obtained was white, that which was what with the Kshatriyas obtained was red, that which the Vaishyas got was yellow, and that which was given to the Shudras was black. And Shudras are the lowest caste. This is the lowest caste. So the lowest caste people are black people basically. And this is clearly racist. Like all the black peoples are the lowest caste, and lowest caste people cannot do anything. Like they have to be slaves basically. And the highest caste people, which is the Brahmins, who are the white-skinned people, are basically allowed to take the properties of the Shudras. They're allowed to take the properties of the Shudras and like their wives, their money, and everything. Right? And I'm going to show you all the text for this. So this is hilarious because many Hindus say, "Oh, Hinduism is against, shows this cultural diversity. We're clearly not racist, except you really are." But anyway, so let me show you guys another funny thing. So there's this Hindu priest, right? And this Hindu priest had a massive rant in one of his lectures where he basically said that, let me show you guys the text. Yeah, so basically he had this massive kind of like massive rant about black people, right? So basically he says, let me share the, give me a second. 77 14 1977. Oh, a second. Sorry about this. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. Let me share this. By the way, guys, don't leave, please. I did a lot of research to find this. If you guys will just leave, it doesn't help. But anyway, so yeah. So basically, Prabhupada, Swami Prabhupada, is a very famous Hindu scholar. He has entire schools in America named after him. Here's what he says. Shudra, which is like the black people of the lowest caste, is to be controlled only, right? So the black people are to be controlled only. Here. Black people are to be controlled only. They are never to be given freedom. Just like in America, the blacks were slaves. They were under control. And since you have given them equal rights, they are disturbing, most disturbing, always creating a fearful situation, uncultured and drunkards. What trainings they have got? They have got equal right? This is best to keep them under control as slaves, but give them sufficient food, sufficient clothes, not more than that. Then they will be satisfied. Look at what is this guy saying. This guy is insane. By the way, please, no, this is not some rant of like some random Hindu. This is the rant of Swami Prabhupada, who is one of the most influential Hindus outside of India, right? And look at what he's saying. He's literally saying black people should be kept under control as slaves. Slaves. That's literally what Hinduism teaches. That's what they believe. They believe black people are the lowest caste people, or like people who deserves no right. And if you think that, and people think that, oh, Hinduism is all about peace and tranquility. No, it's about this kind of like white people dominating the black people. And this is why many Nazis were actually very fond of Hinduism, right? So that's one thing. But I want to show you guys another hilarious example. In Hinduism, if you're a low caste person, you actually cannot speak or touch a higher caste person. For example, let me share this with you guys. Let me share this example. Here we go. Basically, low caste people cannot touch higher caste people. Let me share this. Here we go. Let me share this. Be patient, please. Here we go. So this is in Dharma Sutra, Prashna 2, Patala 1, Kanda 2. So basically, it's chapter 1, verse 2, basically. In 8 and 9 verse, it says, as it is sinful to touch a Kandala. Kandala basically means Shudra, or the lowest caste people. So it is sinful to speak to him or to look at him. The penance for those offenses will be declared. The penance for touching him is to bathe So if you're like a white person that touches a black person, you have to take a shower, right? Submerging the whole body for speaking to him, to speak to a Brahman, for looking at him, to look at the lights of heaven, right? So basically, if you somehow touch a black person, you have to take a shower. What is this? Is the Bible is true? Okay, that's not the topic of today. You guys can come back another time. We're not discussing Christianity. And no, Prophet never said that the Bible, entire Bible, the canon of the Bible is somehow legitimate. He never said that. So this is a clear example of racism in Hinduism. But let's see more of this. Oh yeah, there's another book. It's in Jungya Upanishad, I believe. And it says, it basically says that it's in Bengali, so I'm just gonna say what it says. Basically, it says that, basically, if you're like a low caste person, and if you basically help a Brahmin or like this kind of like higher caste people and wipe their butt and help them with water and wipe their butt, not wipe their butt, but like help them, give them water so they can wipe their butt or whatnot, then you're going to go to heaven or you're going to get a reward for this. So basically, if you're like a low caste, your whole job is to like clean the latrines, clean like the toilets. That's like your whole job. Still loading, but anyway, so yeah, that's basically what it says. Another text in, I believe it's in Skanda Purana. It says the following. Give me a second. By the way, I'm just showing you guys all these examples of like kind of like horrible examples of what like Hinduism teaches regarding the caste system. So you guys get what Daniel is talking about. Yeah, let me share this. Yeah. If any foolish one of impairs soul, this is talking about low caste people, resorts to sin and heresy, abandons his own Brahmana kinsman. Sorry, it's talking about a Brahman. And honors kinsmen of other caste. His merit previously acquired becomes reduced to ash and not otherwise. So here is basically saying, if you're like a Brahman, if you're like a higher caste person, and you're nice to a low caste person, then basically what happens is that you commit sin. You commit sin because you're nice to this kind of like low caste people, right? And then it says later on in 63, the Shudras who become antagonistic to the Brahmins who were honored by the Brahma, Shiva, will go to hell. So if you're like a higher caste person, you cannot be nice to a low caste person. But if you're like a low caste person, you have to be nice to a higher caste person. So if you're born into a low caste family, you have to be insulted your whole life. It literally says in their textbook, you have to be insulted your whole life. Like that's the law. But if you're like a higher caste person, you have to be praised your whole life. That's the law. That's literally what it says. It literally says that if you're a high caste person, you have to be, people have to always be nice to you. But if you're a low caste person, you cannot be rude to this kind of like high caste person. But if you're, so basically, if you're a low caste person and you are rude to the higher caste person, you're kind of like punished. But if you're a high caste person and you're nice to kind of like this low caste person, then you're also punished. So this is hilarious because, so yeah, basically, the whole idea here is that if you're like a high caste person, people, like, you cannot be nice to like low caste people. But if you're low caste people, then you have to be nice to higher caste people. And this creates this like a horrible dichotomy and this kind of like class-based society where this group of people are always treated nicely, where this other group of people who are supposed to be this kind of like low caste people, they're always insulted. They're always kind of like looked down upon. And another text, it says, it's in Law of Manu, I believe. Yeah, it's in Law Manu. Let me share this. Sorry if I'm taking too long, but it's important that you guys know what is being said. Yeah, let me highlight. Yeah. Here, it's in a Manusmriti. It says, let me make it bigger. Here we go. It says, a Brahman may confidently seize the goods of a Shudra, for as the slave can have no property, the master may take his possession. So if you're like a high caste Brahman, you can basically go to the bank and take the money of all the all the low caste people. So if you're like a high caste person, you can take any property that the low caste people have, right? But if you're a low caste person, you cannot take the property of high caste person, right? So this is like the Hindu law, right? And this like now a lot of people may say that what does this has to do with like violence, right? Again, like please note these things have to be established through violence because people are not gonna give them their wealth, right? So the point is that this is also a form of violence, right? Because you're violently taking their kind of like property, even though they may not want you to take their property. Uh, Another place it says Shudras cannot amass wealth. Highlight this. All right, hold up. Not sure where this is. Page 131. Okay, I think I accidentally did not. Oh, here it is. So this is also in the law of Manu. Let me share this. It's in the law of Manu. Here we go. And it says basically, it says that if you're Shudra, here, look at what it says. No collection of wealth must be made by Shudra, even though he is able to do it. For a Shudra who has acquired wealth gives pain to the Brahmanas, right? So basically, if you're like a low caste person and you earn money, it's gonna hurt the feelings of the poor white kind of like Brahmins, right? So you should not earn money. If you're like a low caste person, you have to be poor. If you're like rich somehow, become rich, you cannot do that because it's gonna hurt the Brahmins because they're the ones who are supposed to be rich in society, right? They're the ones who are supposed to have all this kind of like houses and like all this buffet of foods and all the junk that goes to the kind of like this kind of like Shudras, these kind of low caste people, right? Again, like this is disgusting. And basically, and this is the thing, like they are not allowed to earn any money or basically have any kind of like property. This is why many Shudras in India are basically homeless. They're jobless and they don't have any money. And the funny thing is that many of that are kind of translated in India to many Muslims because Muslims are also allowed to not own properties in many areas, or like not own property, but more like even though they're allowed in law, but many Hindus don't sell properties to like many Muslims because they treat them like lower caste people, right? So this tradition of oppression still exists in India, and both Muslims and low caste people are affected by this. So this is a kind of like disgusting practices that Hinduism teaches. And this kind of like violence is only acceptable in Hinduism. So yeah, and there's another thing that I wanted to show you guys, and this is actually even more disturbing. There is a text in Hinduism which basically describes human sacrifice. Because a lot of Hindus many times may claim that, there's no human sacrifice in Hinduism, but that is not true. This is a story of Kali, who is like this kind of like war goddess. And if you guys read what it says, it will disturb you in many levels. So let's read this. So you know how this kind of like this Hindu Arjuna was basically whining about how like Muslims eat meat. Well, take a look at this. So here, basically, it describes a war between Kali, who's like this Hindu, black Hindu goddess, dark Hindu goddess, and this kind of like Asuras, who are basically like this living creature. They're not even demons. A lot of people say, "Oh, these are just demons." These are not demons. These are basically kind of like a different type of creatures. Because in Mahabharata, there are many examples. There's a story of how one of the Pandava brothers actually gets married to a Asura. So clearly, these are not demons, because why would this kind of like demigod get married to like a demon? It doesn't make sense. So clearly, these are like different creatures or different kind of people that existed. So one of these kind of like two kind of like what do you call it? Asuras were fighting against this kind of like goddess Kali, and then after defeating them, this is what happens. Vaishya said, "O king, hearing thus the word of Amika Ambaka spoke to her again. In this war sacrifice, there is this axe which is sacrificial post." No, wait, hold on. Let me read from a bit earlier than this, because here, yeah, sacrificial post. "I will offer these two victims as thy sacrifice." Please note, he's talking about this kind of like human beings, or like this kind of like creature, and offering them as sacrifice to this goddess. "Thus, no act of envy will be committed," i.e., killing in a sacrifice is not considered as envy. Thus, saying this, Kalika Devi cut off their head with a great force and gladly drank their blood. So it literally says that this goddess chopped off the head of these two people, not people, Asuras, and then drank their blood. Like, does this sound like a god, or does this sound like a demon? Like, you tell me. Like, this sounds like a psychopath or like some kind of vampire. But anyway, thus seeing these two Asuras killed, Ambika said gladly, "Thou hast done a great service to the gods." So the gods are very happy that these two humans, or like these two people, were like sacrificed. "So I will give you an excellent boon, O Kaliki, as thou hast killed Kanda and Munda. Henceforth thou will be renowned as the Kamuda." So basically, what happened is that this kind of like goddess basically took these two people before the other gods and chopped their head off, and the gods were very happy about this, and they were going to give them a boon. And from this, basically, the tradition of human sacrifice came from, right? And by the way, this human sacrifice, the concept of human sacrifice, is well established in Hinduism, right? But of course, Hinduism has nothing to do with violence, right? According to this kind of like Hindu apologetics nonsense. But anyway, let's continue, inshallah. Oh, sorry. Let's continue with the debate reaction.
Sacrifices are disproportionately drawn from the lower castes. This is why India is the human sacrifice capital of the world. Devadasi, or child temple prostitution, typically involves lower caste girls. Lower castes who do not comply with the caste rules go straight to hell. The Hindu king must keep lower castes in their place, enforce slave labor, and punish caste rule violations with severe penalties or execution. This is how Hinduism enforces caste, with brutal consequences for disobedience. Hindu apologists respond to all this by claiming there is no caste, or that it's voluntary. Genetic evidence debunks these lies. Harvard geneticist David Reich notes, rather than an invention of colonialism, long-term endogamy as embodied in India today in the institution of caste has been overwhelmingly important for millennia. The simplest way to explain the genetic data is to imagine a water bottle. If I add blue and yellow food coloring and shake it, the colors mix. This is what happens when two groups interbreed. Over generations, their DNA blends, and genetic analysis reveals genetic homogenization. Now imagine if I shake the water bottle and the blue and yellow colors never mix. The only way that could happen is if I had some mechanism to forcefully prevent the colors from mixing. That's what happens with the caste system. When we look at the genetic profile of current-day Indians, there is no homogenization, even among groups that live in the exact same village. This can only be explained by a strict caste system imposed on Indians by force for millennia. In short, the genetic data is the trump card that demolishes all the cheap Hindu apologetics. The indisputable fact is that Hinduism came to India through an Aryan invasion. The Aryans believed they were a superior race entitled to dominate dark-skinned natives. Hindu myth number 4, the primary way to spread...
Yeah, this is well established by the caste system, as I mentioned. Like the kind of like the Brahmins are considered white people, as I just showed you guys, and the Shudras are considered black people. So yeah, what he says is absolutely correct.
Religion is conversion, and that's why Islam is evil and Hinduism is not, since Hinduism does not seek conversion. This is also false. As a matter of historical fact, the primary way religions and cultures have spread is not through conversion, but through genocide and caste. As we've seen, paleogenetics proves that human history is a never-ending story of groups competing with each other for scarce resources, resulting in war and conquest. Every extant culture and religion has engaged in violent conquest, but the conquerors have to choose what to do with the conquered population, either genocide, caste system, or conversion. Genocide and imposing a caste system are the two most common in history. They're also the most violent, and this is what Hinduism chooses. You and your descendants will either be eliminated, or you'll forever be part of a dominated slave caste. This is how Hinduism spread throughout India after the Aryan invasion and thereafter. Islam, by contrast, chooses religious conversion, which is less violent because it allows the conquered population to eventually integrate with the dominant population by converting, rather than remain a subjugated caste for eternity. Ironically, Hindu apologists criticize Islam for spreading through violence and what they call love jihad, but Hinduism spreads in a far more violent way. This is because the caste system eventually eliminates the indigenous population. The caste system allows men in higher castes to reproduce with lower caste women without any resulting children being attributed to the higher caste, with any resulting children being attributed to the higher caste and being taught the caste rules. Meanwhile, lower caste men are left without mating options, so their genetic line is eliminated. Generation after generation, the indigenous population that constitutes the lower caste are eliminated because the men could not reproduce and the women produce children for their upper caste masters. This is the Hindu love jihad, if we can call it that, and it's how Hinduism spread throughout India. It was not through conversion, it was through caste selective breeding. Many Hindu religious texts speak to this. The Gautama Sutra says that if a low caste member has intercourse with an Aryan woman, his punishment is castration and then execution. These brutal punishments ensure that lower caste men never intermix. Hindu apologists,
As a matter of fact, low caste people can't even look at white caste people or like higher caste people.
just will deny these teachings, but paleogenetics proves otherwise. Consider that in white-dominated caste systems, white women are restricted to reproducing only with white men to preserve biological purity, while white men freely reproduce with non-white women, spreading white male DNA downwards. Since Y chromosome is passed down from fathers, we can detect caste domination through analyzing the Y chromosome. Genetic studies prove that modern Indian Y chromosomes are predominantly Aryan, while the rest of the DNA, mitochondrial DNA from the mother side, is Dravidian. This suggests Aryan conquerors bred with Dravidian women producing mixed Aryan children, while Dravidian men were either killed or barred from reproducing by strict caste rules. Thus, Hinduism spread not through conversion, but through forced breeding of subjugated castes. So far, we've looked at genetic and textual evidence of Hindu violence, but we should also look at modern India. The current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, is nicknamed the Butcher of Gujarat because he was implicated by human rights groups in a massacre of 2,000 Muslim minorities last year.
Yeah, by the way, this is well documented, even in a documentary called Modi, India, the Modi question. If you guys can find the documentary, please watch it. It shows clear evidence of Modi orchestrating the Gujarat massacre. And I also mentioned this in my previous video, so go and watch it. So yeah, it's a well documented case where basically this terrorist became the prime minister of India, sadly.
Here, Hindu leader threatened to slaughter 200,000 Muslims because of a cow. Even the great-grandson of Gandhi publicly has threatened to cut the throats of Muslims. There are crazy extremists in every religion, but in Hinduism, the crazy extremists are India's highest political authorities. In addition to unhinged calls for violence, other Hindu politicians make the most racist statements against lower castes, such as the untouchable Dalit castes, are referred to as street dogs. At the same time, the upper Brahmin castes are so superior, they're literally considered gods. In 2016, Amnesty International reported that in 1 year alone, there were 40,000 crimes against lower castes in India. Human Rights Watch reported 100,000 instances of rape, murder, and arson against Dalits, and said the real number is probably much higher. In conclusion, Hinduism came to India through the Aryan invasion and then spread throughout India due to a brutal caste system that eventually biologically eliminated the indigenous population. Islamic invasion, by contrast, imposed religious belief and gave indigenous populations the right to convert to Islam. This in and of itself makes Islam superior to Hinduism. But even if we put the racial subjugation aspect to the side, Islamic beliefs and norms are still objectively superior to Hinduism because Hinduism teaches sex rituals with dead horses, worshipping rapist gods by rubbing their penises, widow burning, child temporal prostitution, and human sacrifice, whereas Islam teaches worshipping one transcendent, all-powerful, merciful God whilst establishing his justice on the earth for the benefit of all mankind.
Thank you very much for that opening. Folks, want to let you know we're going to go into 7-minute rebuttals. Also want to let you know we will have that Q&A as mentioned. So at the end, we'll read your questions that you put in the chat. If you tag me with @ModernDayDebate, or if you put in a super chat, those will be read first. And if you haven't yet, hit that like button. Once we get to 50 likes, Jeff in chat said he would send everyone a special surprise in their email inbox. Once we get to 50 likes, I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. With that, we'll go into 7-minute rebuttals. Arjuna, the floor is all yours.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Okay, so I'll start a timer too. So as expected, there is a bunch of quote mining and some clutching for straws at ancient history, which is not well documented. So Aryan invasion theory is
Quote money, what did you do? All you did is take things out of context in Islamic history.
acknowledged by scholars to have been created as a form of subjugation to create tension among the Hindu community when the British conquered, colonized. And the scholarly consensus today is that it's not supported. Yeah, sure, there's genetic evidence that peoples have moved around, but there's no evidence of a great battle and people being destroyed. And
Like he literally cited the evidence. Like, what are you talking about?
yeah, just using a bit of genetic evidence is not going to say there was huge conquest. The Vedas have a lot of metaphor. He's, the Shiva Lingam, it's a round stone, and yeah, sure, it's metaphorically thought of as Shiva's penis, but he's taking things a bit too literally to make that argument there. Metaphor is the way, many religions will focus on things to meditate and understand things metaphorically for a greater understanding and meditative purification of consciousness.
Oh, by the way, I have a video on Shiva Lingam. It's not some metaphor for Shiva's penis. It is Shiva's penis. There's a whole story about it. Like the whole story is that Shiva basically went to this place where he basically he was naked in front of some woman, and one of the rishis basically curses him, and his penis falls off. And his penis is so powerful that he basically destroys the earth. And so in order to protect the earth, they basically does some kind of like magic ritual and basically stops his penis, right? And then they ask Shiva to stop doing this, and Shiva says, okay, I'll stop doing this if you worship my penis, right? Like, this is the story. This isn't the Purana. Like, you guys can watch the video. It's hilarious.
The sati burning is like, what he needs to do to show that Hinduism is violent is show that the Vedas actually teach this. So Islam doesn't actually have a variety of teachings with different ideals for lower and higher, what people are ready for as teachings. Whereas we have a concept that, all world religions, or at least a large portion of them, were started by God because the people at that time and place were only ready.
So he basically puts this kind of like stupid criteria where he says that, basically, if he wants to show that Hinduism is violence, he need to show that it's in the Vedas. It's in the Vedas, guys. First of all, everything he's quoting is mentioned in the Vedas. The Puranas, they're mentioned in the Vedas. The kind of like the Manusmriti, they're mentioned, like the law of Smriti is mentioned in the Vedas. So all of this is from the Vedas. Like, what are you talking about? Like he said also, like the thing is that let's assume that you have this criteria where in Hinduism, if you want to interpret something, then you have to go to the Vedas, right? but you cannot apply that law to non-Muslims, right? Because the thing is that you, like, when you're in a debate, right? When you're in a debate, your job is to simply counter the arguments of the other person, not to say how they should interpret your text. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what kind of argument is this? Like, you should respond to his argument, not tell him how he should read your text. And that's not his job. He's not like a Hindu, but that has to obey like Hindu laws or like Hindu ways of interpretation. So this objection makes no sense. Like, he's putting on this criteria on Daniel, but Daniel's not a Hindu. Like, he doesn't have to obey these rules. You're in a debate, and you have to like counter the arguments of Daniel instead of saying, "Oh, you cannot read all this text. But you have to like read from the Vedas." Now, the thing is that if you don't accept this text, then you need to explain why these texts are mentioned in the Vedas itself. But the funny thing is that a lot of these things are mentioned in the Vedas. Like, the caste system is mentioned in the Vedas. They're mentioned in the Yajur Veda. So this is false. But anyway, let's continue.
So much, and we, as a Gaudiya Vaishnava, I believe the highest revelation was given in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. But within all Hindus, within the Vedic context, acknowledge a hierarchy of text being revealed and something given as ideal. This is what's held up, and in no case will you find an example of something that the Vedic texts themselves say this is the highest ideal, where he can make these arguments he's leading against it. Yeah, sure. Arjuna fought the battle against the Kauravas, but he wasn't. It wasn't. The battle was pretty terrible, but that war was fought for dharmic purposes because there's a whole backstory there of all the horrible things the Kauravas were doing. And of course, if you take any war out of context, you can make either side look bad. You put it in context, and then you understand the actions of Arjuna on the battlefield and why Krishna was saying this war as before. It's not because he's a Kshatriya and it's his duty. It's because as a Kshatriya, as a person who's capable of fighting, he has a duty to protect those who can't protect themselves, to fight and ward off those that are creating evil in the world and are stronger than he's strong enough to fight the boss. So that's why it's his duty. The caste system, if he'd actually studied Hinduism with the view of trying to understand it, he'd be well aware that there's huge portions that have very robust arguments based on Hindu scripture, that the caste system is supposed to be, it's not based on birth, it's based on nature. And it's something like a Myers-Briggs.
Again, this is false. Here, let me show you guys. Let me quote from the Vedas itself. He says the caste system is not based on, is not literal, right? This is false. Here, let's read this. It's in Rig Veda 10, 19, 12. It says, his mouth became Brahmana, his arms became Rajana. This is talking about this kind of like Vishnu, right? Who's this ultimate god, right? His thighs became the Vaishya, and the Shudra was born from his feet. The Shudra was born from his feet. Now, what kind of metaphor is this? The Shudra are born from his feet. Like, it's literally mentions that the Shudras are born from his feet, and it's in the Vedas. So, like, you cannot deny that, like if it's literally mentioning the concept of birth here, right? So, nowhere does it say that, oh, the caste system is actually based on merit. No, it's saying that the Shudras are literally birthed from their feet. They're created like that. This is why Hindu tradition or in India, caste system is based on birth, because it literally says so. And he's saying that, oh, no, this the Shudras or the caste system is based on merit. No, it's not. Like, for example, if you look at the commentary of Sayana, who's like a 3rd century Hindu commentator, the Brahmana was his mouth, the Rajana was made his arm, that which was the Vaishya was his thigh, and the Shudra sprang from his feet. And nowhere does this scholar say that this is talking about merit. No, they accepted it as it is, which is that they were created like this. This race of people were created like this. Like, the Brahmas were from the head, the Kshatriyas from the arm, kind of like Vaishya from the thigh, and the Shudras, who are the lower caste, are from the feet. So it's literally in the Vedas. And nowhere does it say that, it's based on merit. Because how can it be based on merit if God's created them like this? They were literally created like this. This is why caste system is based on birth. It's not based on merit. Anyway, so that was lie number 1. But he's gonna lie a lot throughout this debate. Let's continue, inshallah.
It's a way of structuring society so that people are in careers that suit them, they're doing duties at work, because in current society, we have governments lying and cheating, we have businessmen destroying the planet, there's all sorts of horrible things going on. If you get people with the right nature and the right profession, some people are natural teachers because they just care so much about the students. Some people are terrible teachers, and if we can just understand the psychophysical makeup of people, understand the framework of how to place people in careers based on that, we can have a functional society. However, these teachings can always be degraded. You can have a teaching that's good. Any teaching can be misunderstood. So I can show, and it's been demonstrated by...
By the way, he's committing a logical fallacy, which is called red herring fallacy, which is basically he's talking about things that has nothing to do with the debate topic. Yeah, sure. In a society, you have to have this kind of divisions where some people who are good at one thing should do that one thing. Other people who are not good at one thing should do that one thing. But what the hell does this have to do with treating this one group of people horribly? Right? Because that's what Hinduism teaches. Hinduism teaches this kind of like untouchable people, or like the Shudras, cannot even be touched. You can take their properties. You can basically take their woman, interbred with their woman, and kill off their man. This is what the kind of nonsense that teaches. How does that get justified? By you simply saying, oh, different talents of people should do different things. Yes, of course, everyone agrees with that. But what no one agrees with is deciding that based on birth. And nowhere does it say that in Hinduism, these things are based on merit.
Hindu leaders like Srila Bhakti Saraswati, that this caste system, as it goes on in India today, is a total abomination and degradation of the original Vedic teachings. He would argue these things so vehemently that people who disagreed with him, if they saw him walking down the street across the road, to avoid coming in contact with him. And he had several public debates on the subject. So, I mentioned at the start how I value interfaith dialogue, but Dan here, as we're saying, is not one of those people. He's just here to make Hinduism look bad at any cost. He's got no interest in actually demonstrating that there's actually Hindus who are making a case for this. Yes, the caste system has many people who benefit from it, and they'll continue to perpetrate. But if you actually look at the hermeneutics within the system, the traditions within the system, the caste system is rejected. And like the horse sacrifice example he gave, there's no injunction saying today people should do this horse sacrifice. When somebody takes up, not even within Gaudiya Vaishnavas, other sects of Vaishnava, Shaiva systems, if somebody takes it up today,
Islam.
nobody's going to tell them to go and sacrifice a horse.
Brother Faizan Syed is here. Welcome to the stream. We're discussing Hinduism and the debate that happened between Daniel and this kind of like Hindu apologist.
And nobody has any right to complain about animal sacrifice if they're a meat eater. The amount of animals killed for the meat industry is...
By the way, Arjuna was also a meat eater. Pandu was a meat eater. These are figures from your own Hindu religion. So are you going to condemn them as well?
Nowhere comparable to the odd animal that might have been sacrificed in a ritual ceremony. He mentioned human sacrifice. This is something that has been criticized. There's a pastime where Krishna criticizes someone for doing it. The times when it has been practiced and talked about, it's symbolic.
Again, like human sacrifice was done by Kali. Kali is the wife of Shiva. Then why didn't Krishna criticize Kali? Why didn't he criticize Kali for doing human sacrifice? Brother, thanks, but I don't know other religions than Abrahamic religions, but still happy to be here. Sure, bro, no worries. It was a fun debate, and I'm kind of reviewing it. But yeah, let's continue.
They use rice cakes as symbols for human flesh. They're not actually killing humans. Whereas you have Muslims killing people because they profess the wrong faith. Now, I know one of the arguments, I don't know if he stated explicitly, but it is the point Dan makes, is that, Muslims killing non-Muslims for apostasy or for not converting is fine because they can just convert to Islam, whereas the caste system is abominable because it's based on birth. But the difference with me is I can agree that the caste system based on birth is abominable and disown it and say this is not based on Hindu teachings and it's totally immoral.
That's false. The caste system is mentioned in the Vedas itself. As a matter of fact, you know what? Let me show you guys something. Actually, let's wait. Let's finish this up.
Whereas Dan is actually here defending practices like death for apostasy. So, if America were to become an Islamic nation tomorrow, who knows how many people might be killed for apostasy? It was, it could be in the
Again, this is a straw man. Let me show you guys. A straw man argument fallacy. It's clearly a straw man argument fallacy. It's misrepresenting our position here. Straw man argument fallacy. So basically, the way apostasy law work is based on contract, right? So for example, if you want to live in an Islamic state or Islamic country that has Islamic law, you have to have a contract with that nation, right? Which is that nation is going to give you protection. In return, you have to obey certain laws or conditions that they have. This is how laws were established, right? And one of the laws is that if you're a Muslim and you want to live under the protection of the Islamic state, then you cannot leave your religion, right? Because your citizenship is based on your religion. That's like the Constitution, right? Like for example, imagine this, right? If you're an American and you say that, you know what, I'm going to renounce my citizenship, what's going to happen to you? They're going to kick you out, right? And if you refuse to go out, then they'll kill you. Similar thing here, where if you're a Muslim and you kind of like say that I'm no longer a Muslim, that's a violation of the contract that you have with the state, right? And this is where the apostasy law comes in, which is that because you violated the contract, you will not be executed, right? That's the reason why this happened. This has nothing to do with like some kind of religious thing. Of course, religion plays a part. Of course, that no one wants people to encourage others to go to the hellfire, but this is also another aspect of it. So when he says that, apostasy laws, if tomorrow in America, if America becomes a Muslim nation, all these non-Muslims are going to be killed. No, because they're not apostates. Apostate is someone who breaks the contract. Let's say there's an Islamic state, and someone in that state decides to become a non-Muslim, and they're breaking the contract. That's why they're punished. But if tomorrow whole of America becomes like a Muslim state, and then if there are non-Muslims exist, they didn't break any contract, so they're not going to be killed. A new contract might be made with them, but like they're not going to be killed because they didn't violate any contract. So this is not how like apostasy law work. But regardless, let's continue.
tens of millions of people that would die as a result of doctrines he is espousing today going into law if America became an Islamic country. Nothing that I defend today would result in any deaths if my understanding of Hinduism were to take power in the governments.
Like, again, this is false. Like, Krishna literally says that there's nothing wrong with killing people because their soul will live on. Or like in Hinduism, there are countless places where it says that if a lower caste person insults a higher caste person, they're to be executed. And like there are many examples of like violent teachings in Hinduism, but so this is absolutely false. But yeah, just continue.
So he's going to have to do a lot more than talking about some clutching at straws for genetic data, misunderstanding aspects of the Vedas, and then the Manusmriti. One last comment on that is considered to be interpolated, and it's also a text that changes with time. And it says inside of it, if something is not beneficial or not favored, don't follow it. The Vedic teachings are based on having a living guru who understands things and sees them for themselves. So we don't have any of this danger of rigidly understanding ancient texts. We have modern people who purify their heart and then make decisions based on their best judgment.
You got it. Thank you very much for that rebuttal. We're going to take over to Daniel for a 7-minute rebuttal. Folks, if you haven't yet, I want to let you know really quick for these events that we are going to host.
By the way, guys, I don't know if I can cover the whole debate because it's almost been 3 hours. So if it goes past 3 hours, I'm gonna end this, and I can do it another time, maybe tomorrow or the day after, and the rest of the debate. But yeah, let's continue, inshallah.
With Daniel this summer.
Also, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. It helps a lot. But regardless, let's continue.
In Las Vegas, these debates require quality equipment. And we're like, hey, we know the quality equipment we need because we used it already, we rented it. But we thought, hey, as many debates as we're going to do, it makes more sense to buy rather than rent. So there's a GoFundMe link pinned at the top of the chat and in the description box as we're raising funds to buy camera lenses. So we have these bought and ready to use so that we can make in-person debates common again, because in actuality, a lot of people don't realize very few debates happen on college campuses. And that's why I'll share with you another update about modern day debate, as we are opening chapters on college campuses shortly. But nonetheless, before we get to that link for the GoFundMe is at the top of the description box and the chat. Join us as we are making debates common again in person and at universities. With that, Daniel, the floor is set for 7 minutes.
I need to share my screen again, James.
Ready.
Okay, so in my response, Arjuna is just hand-waving genetic evidence. He's saying it's flimsy. No, I cited the scholarly consensus. Can he cite me a scholar or an authority who says that all of this genetic evidence and the consensus of scholars like David Reich at Harvard University and others is actually bunk, is actually not the case? I'm citing Harvard Medical School. I'm citing Oxford University Press. I'm citing all these major journals. You saw the citations earlier, and Arjuna is not prepared to handle this, so he just hand-waves it and says that it's not actual serious research. No, there's entire books that are written about the Aryan invasion, that are written about the caste system, the reality of the caste system for millennia. This is not. This is the current day consensus, and as I mentioned, it's new. So maybe Arjuna is just not aware because it's only been 10 years. Prior to 10 years, yeah, there was a debate on whether there was an Aryan invasion or not, but that question was settled definitively because of paleogenetics, and that's the data that I have shown you or I've referred to, and I've given you all the citations that you can go study and read for yourself. I've also quoted you the words of these scholars. Here is this other slide that I showed you. Here's the peer review. Just 4 of the top papers. There are dozens of papers, and there are a lot of books as well. Now, Arjuna says that, oh, this was...
Also, like, you don't have to like go to paleontology, right? I mean, it's in the Vedas. Like, which Hindu rejects the Vedas? Like, nobody. Like, if you cannot even be a Hindu if you reject the Vedas. And this is mentioned in the Vedas. It's mentioned in Rig Veda, right? In Rig Veda 10:90:12. It says his mouth became Brahman, his arms became Kshatriya, his thighs became Vaishya, and Shudras came from his feet. He's talking about Vishnu. So basically, these people came from different body parts of Vishnu, and the Shudras came from the feet of the Vishnu. That's how these people were created. So, like, it's in the Vedas. So this idea that there's no evidence for this is false. Like, there's historical evidence for this, such as from the Vedas, which is like the oldest text that they have, and also DNA evidence. So even like you don't necessarily even have to go to the DNA, right? Because it's in the Vedas.
Peaceful migration. If it was peaceful, then did the Dravidian men, the indigenous men who are in the subcontinent with the Indus Valley civilization, did they voluntarily let these Aryan foreigners take all their women and have sex with them and have children with them and wipe out the Dravidian male line, the Dravidian Y chromosome? Did the Dravidian men voluntarily do this? No, it was by force. It was through genocide and caste selective breeding. And this is, again, the scholarly consensus. This is not, yeah, I'm saying it in a polemical way for the purpose of this debate, but that is actually the objective fact that has been established scientifically. He references to Ashvamedha, the dead horse sacrifice ritual that involves sex with a dead horse. And he explains this as saying, oh, this is not for today. This is only for the past. How does that make it any better? This is in the Vedas. So Arjuna said that, oh, I only accept the Vedas. Only the Vedas represent Hinduism. Well, the Vedas are talking about horse
Maybe in the past, the horses were evil. Maybe they ran too fast. I don't know. Maybe that's why it was okay to have sex with them.
sacrifice. You not only sacrifice the horse. He said, oh, well, if you disagree with sacrificing horses, how can you eat meat? Well, yeah, I eat a hamburger. I don't have sex with it. I don't have sex, or I don't have, again, like we can go and read what the Ashvamedha is about. It's about putting the genitals of a dead horse into the genitals of a human queen, a human woman. This is what the Ashvamedha says. How can you believe that this is from a holy source? This is the Vedas of Hinduism. And all that Arjuna can say to explain this is that, oh, that was for the past. So Arjuna says, just follow higher ideals. Where in Hinduism does it say you follow higher ideals?
Also, like, even if something is from the past, right? And And so, okay, let's actually deal with this kind of like claim, because a lot of Hindus will claim a lot of these kind of like rulings are from the past, guys. Right? It's not relevant now. This is false, because uh, the way Hinduism works is the Vedas is the ultimate teachings. Right? This is basically something that was given to the human beings from the gods, or like through these mediums and whatnot. Right? So if something is in the Vedas, these are timeless. Like, you cannot deny this, right? You cannot say that, oh, these are for the time only. No, this is mentioned in the Vedas. The caste system is mentioned in the Vedas. Vedas are supposed to be timeless, so these things are timeless, or should be timeless, right? The caste system is in the Vedas. The kind of like the Manusmriti is mentioned in the Vedas. So, or the Puranas even are mentioned in the Vedas. So you cannot argue and say that, oh, this is just for the time only. Unless you're saying that, oh, Vedas are only for the time only, then why don't you say that Hinduism is only for that time? You don't no longer have to be a Hindu or follow Dharma. Like, you can literally say that. Like then why can people just say that, oh, Hinduism is for the past, people in the past did, but we no longer have to follow Dharma. Obviously, that's not true, because you always have to follow Dharma. And what is Dharma? It's Veda. And what is Veda? And things like caste system and like this kind of like other violent teachings are also mentioned in the Vedas. So this argument doesn't make any sense. It's just non sequitur. But regardless, see, brother Hassan said, let's continue.
Deals rather than the Manusmriti, rather than the actual Hindu text. I want to see a citation. I know that there are plenty of neo-Hindus in promoting neo-Hinduism and saying that, oh, well, all of these rituals, human sacrifice, sati, caste system, this is all irrelevant because this is not actually our religion. Yeah, you're following neo-Hinduism. This is something that you've just created as a response to modernity, as a response to pressure from British colonialism and from Western liberalization. Every religion can say this. I can also take the same kind of idiotic lines and everything that Arjuna presented. I say, oh, this is, I don't believe that the Quran should be read literally. I don't believe that Hadith should be read literally. I'm going to throw every historical example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions conducting war. I'm just going to throw that under the bus. Any Muslim can play that game too, but that makes for like a very stupid debate because I'm not representing Islam in that case. I'm just representing a libtard understanding of Islam. And what Arjuna is presenting, sorry to say, this is a libtard understanding of Hinduism. It's neo-Hinduism. My opponent said that, oh, Daniel, we're in charge of America. There'd be blood running through the streets. Okay, if Arjuna, my opponent, was in charge of America or in charge of the world, would he have no violence? Then how would he enforce what he called dharmic purpose? The dharmic purpose is, oh, when we read the Vedas and Indra, or we read the Gita and we hear about Indra or Krishna rather, and Arjuna fighting this war and killing 1.6 billion people, that's fine because it's for dharmic purposes. Okay, how would you, Arjuna, if you were in charge of the world, enforce dharmic purposes? It has to do with violence, right? You have to have...
Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, you know how he said that, oh, Manusmriti is no longer relevant. This is false, because the Manusmriti is actually mentioned in the Vedas. Okay, so let's take a look at this text. Give a second. All right. Second. Here we go. Yeah. Let me share this with you guys so you know what I'm talking about. Manusmriti is mentioned in the Vedas, so this argument doesn't make any sense. Share screen. Hold on. Give me a second. Yeah, here we go. Share this. Yeah, here it is. Basically, it says the butter. This is by the way from the Vedas. It's basically I believe Yajurveda. Yajurveda, chapter 2, verse 2, 10. Here. So basically it says, the butter is churned from the milk of white cow, while with the white calf, butter is used for sprinkling, and they purify themselves with butter. Verily, he produces whatever splendors exist. Too much splendor is produced. They say he is liable to become a leper. He should insert the verse of Manus. Whatever Manu said is medicine. So who is Manu, right? This is something you guys need to understand. Manu is basically the first human being that was created by these gods, right, in Hinduism. And basically he was like this rishi or like this kind of like prophet-like figure. So here in this Veda, it literally says that whatever Manu said is correct, right? Whatever Manu said is correct. So, and what does Manu said? Like, how do you know what Manu said? And that is what is known as Manusmriti. These are the laws of Manu. Like all these laws that you have that came from Manu is known as Manusmriti. Now, who Manu is something that sometimes people can have debate about, but what is undeniable is Manusmriti is mentioned in Vedas. So when he says, "Oh, Manusmriti has nothing to do with the Vedas," no, it's literally mentioned in the Vedas. So this is just false. But regardless, let's continue.
have to enforce through violence. So explain that. And then the whole explanation that, a war is okay in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Vedas, that's fine because we only fight wars for dharmic purposes. Anyone can say that. Everyone can say that. Islam also only fought wars and only spread for good purposes, for the purpose of justice, for the purposes of spreading Islam. Islam invaded the subcontinent precisely to end the disgusting polytheism, worshipping rapist gods, worshipping these evil demon gods, sati, caste system. Islam invaded, and it was a good thing that Islam invaded to end these terrible, disgusting practices like having sex with dead horses. So you can, yeah, I agree. Conquest for good purposes, that is absolutely endorsed in Islam. And I'm glad that Arjuna thinks that it's endorsed in Hinduism to some extent as well, even though he seems to be hypocritical about that. He talks about meat eating. Guess what? India is the world's largest exporter of beef. Okay, the only Hindu country, majority Hindu, ruled by the Hindu thought BJP, they're the biggest exporter of beef. Animal cruelty is an epidemic in India. Many news articles on this, killing cats, killing dogs. It's the rates are quite astonishing. Humans losing humanity, rising instances of animal cruelty in India, land where they
Also, like they have like human sacrifice in their religion. So talking about like animal cruelty is hilarious.
are worshipped, says the Indian Express. Killing pregnant elephants, beating tigers to death. What else? Murdering dogs, dog serial killers. This is all found in the animal-loving Indian subcontinent. We mentioned that horse sex ritual. You can read the quote there. So yeah, that's I think 7 minutes. But these are the kinds of responses I have to my opponent.
Thank you very much for that 7-minute rebuttal. We're going to kick it back over to Arjuna for the final 7-minute rebuttal. Folks,
Or not final. Second, right? I get a second one too. Right?
If you haven't hit that like button yet, folks, do remember to hit that like button. We appreciate your support. And Arjuna, the floor is all yours. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Arjuna. Let me unmute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we go. Yeah, I've got my mute over here. So again, we have the clutching of straws based on the genetic evidence. Genetic evidence doesn't prove that there was an actual war. You can have it just shows genetic blows. The Dravidian thing, I'm not super clued up on this, but I've never claimed that through all of Indian history, the highest ideal of Vedic teachings have been followed. I'd like Krishna came 5,000 years ago.
Like you don't have to look at like, kind of like the DNA evidence for this. Like many of these wars are mentioned in your own text. Brother K said they don't kill cows but kill people for slaughtering cows. Yeah, exactly. Gau Raksha, right? It's okay to kill people and do human sacrifice, but if you kill cows, no, that's wrong.
Go and say I'm coming now because religious principles have declined and I'm here reviving. There was a revival, there was a period where things were followed nicely again, and now India is once again in a greater state. Dan gave some examples of India's current degradation, and the difference between me and him is I will point to those examples of immoral, egregious actions going on in India done by Hindus wherever I see it and say, yeah, that stuff's bad, but that's not following the Vedas.
No, that's not bad. They're acting based on your own principles. Like, there's principles for why they're acting like this, and it's everything they do is mentioned in Hinduism, right? Like this is the thing that pissed me off the most. Like everything that many of the Hindu kind of like extremists are doing is mentioned in the Vedas. Like many things, like the Manusmriti, like that, like I just showed you guys, the law of Manu is mentioned in the Vedas. So everything from the Ved, like the Manusmriti, where you have to teach, like treat like these locust people horribly, it's directly like justified by the Vedas. Like, or things like where the caste system, it's mentioned in the Vedas. So if you say that, oh, you know, how the people in India, how they're treating the lower caste people is horrible. If you're saying that, what you're ultimately saying is that what Vedas teaches about people is horrible, right? Then why not saying that? Why not rejecting the Vedas, right? So this is hypocritical. Like he's just contradicting himself. You cannot on one hand say that, or you know, Hinduism teaches caste system. But caste system is evil, but when Hinduism teaches caste system, Hinduism is not evil. It doesn't logically follow. Anyway, let's continue.
The Vedas actually teach something higher. He tried to shrug off this idea of a higher ideal, but it's all, this just shows that he doesn't know the first thing about the Vedas, Vedic hermeneutics, or the traditions they have. You study the Vedas by following tradition. You don't just pick up the book and read it. You have the lineages that are living, that have teachings. You pick one of them and you understand it according to that lineage. So you have to show me a Vedic Sampradaya that supports his understanding of these things. I did a reaction video to a video he did a couple of years ago on this forced sacrifice case. We tried to find what he was quoting from the Vedas. We couldn't find it. We found one thing that was maybe somewhat related to it, and it was criticized. This forced sacrifice example, he's saying this is the Hindu thing. You look what the Hindus are up to. That one case that we could find that was maybe the one Dan was talking about from the Vedas was criticized for not being done right. So it's, yeah, what really matters in terms of which religion is more violent is which one has caused more deaths, more violence, and which one contains beliefs and injunctions which are likely to cause more deaths. He responded to my point on that and saying, well, if Arjuna...
Yeah, it's Hinduism. Like your religion, like in Bhagavad Gita, it literally says that the reason you should commit, like your God, Krishna, literally tells Arjuna to kill his own family members. Kill his own family members. That's a teaching that exists in Hinduism. And the justification is that oh, because if you kill people, you're just destroying the body, but the soul remains, right? Then by this logic, like every violence that exists in the world is completely justified. Then what's wrong with when like Muslims kill people? Like what's wrong with terrorism then? Right? Oh, I mean, like their bodies just destroyed, right? All this kind of like Pahalgam terrorist attack. Oh, it's just their bodies. Like according to like Krishna's logic, it's just their bodies are destroyed. There's going to be reborn as a like a cockroach in the next life, right? That's the Krishna's logic, by the way. Like then what's wrong with like all these like terrorist attacks that you have an objection with, right? So again, like I'm just going by his own logic, and he just gets destroyed by his own logic and his own religion because this is Krishna's logic, right? So then, like, you need to renounce your own religion. But regardless, just continue.
Became in charge of the government, then what would he do? You have to have some violence. It's like, yes, you have to have some violence, but the violence needs to be according to the principles of ahimsa, which is you take out an aggressor when they're actively in a state of aggression to protect the innocent, or you dole out punishment.
Also, he's talking about principle. Like, what principle is there when like you're told to kill your own family members by Krishna? Like, what principle is there? Please note, the Pandavas in Mahabharata, when during the Kurukshetra war, like what they did was basically an offensive warfare. It's an clear example of offensive warfare. They went to their family members and decided to kill them. Again, like they are not legitimate heirs to the throne. They had no claim to the throne because they're like basically bastards. They're like demigods. They're not the actual sons of kings. But the Kauravas were. So like these are the actual war of succession, right? So what principle is there? Like it's just saying that you should kill your family members to get more power, to get more land. That's all it's saying. So there's no principle here.
To people who are criminals to take them off the streets and prevent those crimes from being committed. He's talking about apostasy laws where you kill somebody because they refuse to believe that God is a cosmic psychopath who will do things like have you killed for believing in the wrong religion or send you to hell for eternity for believing in the wrong religion. That's just something I'm not capable of doing. I personally believe God is an all-loving being who will accept your devotion however you give it, even if you misunderstand a little bit, even if you're following it according to another tradition. So when you believe God is a cosmic psychopath who's going to kill people for believing in the wrong religion, then you're going to have...
Like what he's talking about, like he's saying that if a religion has laws that says that if a religion kills other people of other religions, then the god of that religion is a cosmic psychopath, right? But the thing is that your religion teaches that. Like Hinduism teaches that, right? I mean, like this is one of the reasons why, again, like I'm going back to Mahabharata, but this is what Mahabharata teaches. This is what Bhagavad Gita teaches, which is that in order to establish your kind of like dharmic duty, you need to kill your family members. And who are their family members? Their family members are people who are not following Dharma, right? So how is that different than the apostasy laws? If it is the case that people who are not following Dharma can be killed, then that's the same as apostasy law in Islam. Like, how's that different?
Have genocide, because if you truly believe that preacher of that other religion is actively espousing a doctrine that is going to send people to hell, you will go and kill that person.
Also, he also strawmans here, because the thing is that nowhere in Islam that says that you should kill people of other religion. So it's just like a massive strawman. But regardless,
to prevent more people from going to hell, and this is what has happened historically with Islamic communities going around and wiping out Jews and other groups in order to protect their religion.
Again, this is false. Like, quoting on a context, like he's not giving the context of historical, what the historical example was. The historical context was. The context was that there were many conflicts throughout Islamic history because of political reasons, because of economic reasons, right? But this has nothing to do with Islam as a religion. But regardless, it's continue.
The amount of violence that's gone on. I mean, Dan cannot point to a single contemporary example of violence going on during the period of, like, he's going back to prehistory, drawing on genetics in order to say there was violence. And then in this modern examples, he's dealing with animals being abused. Those people just aren't following the Vedas. I can quote the Vedas. We do have some prehistory stuff from Augustine about Indica. He went to India around the time of Alexander the Great and recorded how great the civilization was. And he noticed there was no concept of slavery. It was understood that all men were equal. There was animal hospitals. They had medical care for animals in 2,300 years ago in India, according to Augustine, who wrote this book called Indica. So, I didn't start my timer. Sorry, how much have I got?
3 minutes left.
Okay. And so, which other points were we going to cover? The horse sacrifice. Yeah, I think I responded to the points you just made. So, one of the points I wanted to bring up was the Barbary pirates. For 200 years, they devastated the coasts around Tripoli, Morocco, and whatnot. And when America finally put a stop to it with their naval fleet, that the American Navy was started to wipe out these pirates. And when asked by, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, why do you do this to us? He quoted the Quran and said, we have an injunction from Allah to mistreat and plunder, sorry, I've got a quote in front of me, non-believers. And I'd be delighted if Dan was to say that for 200 years, this group of Barbary pirates was totally misunderstanding Islam, and it doesn't encourage you to...
Yeah, okay. So basically he says that, he cannot show me one example of like violence from Hinduism. Oh, really? Okay, let's show some example of violence from Hinduism. Stop screen. Let me share this. For example, in Uttar Pradesh, this is in India, over 7,400 Muslim homes were demolished in 2024 alone, as authorities, including non-Majbi states, rebrand punitive action against Muslims as development. So in names of development, they're basically destroying all these Muslim houses. But there's no violence in Hinduism. Like Hindus don't do any violent things, right? Right, guys? And a lot of people will say that, oh, what does this has to do with like Hinduism? The reason this has to do with Hinduism is because Hinduism can simply say, oh, they're not following dharma, right? They're not following dharma. So that's what it means, right? And according to Krishna, if someone is not following dharma, you can kill them, right? You can kill them the same way, kind of like Arjuna had to kill, kind of like, his family members because they were not following dharma. So here, Muslims are doing the same thing. Therefore, Muslims can be killed, their properties can be seized, and according to as I just showed you guys, according to Hinduism, you can seize the properties of lower caste people or people of kind of like outer caste, right? So this is completely justified. So and here this guy is saying that, oh, they're like there's an example of like Hindus doing the same, you know. And for example, there are many examples of mosques being destroyed in India. And so like this is kind of like hilarious when he like claims these things. But regardless, let's continue.
Kill non-believers, but the slave trade that went on under the Barbary pirates was massive, went on for 200 years and was finally ended. And it's not too different from the wars that have gone on in the prior centuries under Islamic caliphates and whatnot. So again, the difference between me and Dan is I will, any example you can point to of something that is undeniably immoral, I can say that's not following the Vedas. Yeah, that's whereas he will actively defend apostasy laws.
Also, like, what does piracy has to do with Islam? Like, the debate topic is like which religion is more violent. That's nothing to do with Islam. Like he's giving examples of like pirates. Uh, Brother K said these examples and hand waving means Hindus be inept at stopping massive injustice like this. I think this is the strongest against Hindus who had just hand waved their atrocities. Yeah, exactly. Also, their religion basically teaches atrocities because that's the teaching of like a Krishna. But we gotta continue.
Where you kill people for not believing, which essentially means he thinks God is a cosmic psychopath. If only a cosmic psychopath would want you killed just because you were trying to worship God, but you misunderstood him. Because I personally think that the understanding of God revealed in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is the highest understanding. But according to him, God's going to punish me to eternal hell because I've misunderstood him. I just refuse to believe that God is that kind of cosmic psychopath. And I think when you believe God is a psychopath, you're going to end up doing violent things. And when Christians have believed stuff like that, they've committed violence. And when Muslims have believed things like that, they've committed violence. And then he rejected this idea of the Vedas having ideas of different ideals. Again, it just shows how he's just interested in painting Hinduism in a bad light at any cost and doesn't understand the first thing about Vedic teachings, because there's teachings in different modes of material nature, there's teachings for people in those different modes, and the highest is given as Sattva-gun. Different Puranas are meant for people at different levels, and Amal Purana is given as highest, Bhagavad Gita gives the highest teachings. And in here we find concepts like ahimsa are like, and even with Manu Samhita, we can quote Manu Samhita, I can pull up a list of quotes from there that give really good injunctions and that cancel out the bad ones. And like I said, that the Manu Samhita is widely accepted to have interpolation. So any bad quote you can pull from there, like, okay, well, can you prove to me it's not interpolated? And that's the original text. And even if you can, those injunctions are not meant for now because time moves on, people have different capacities, and there's different ways you govern different people.
With that, I'm make sure I'm not muted. Thank you very much for that 7-minute rebuttal.
But the case said, the United States also tried to just hand wave its wars, for killing the natives, Vietnamese, Iraqis, lot. It just shows how inept liberalism is at stopping evil. Yeah, exactly. Good point. They teach it directly. Yeah, exactly.
From Arjuna, we are going to go to the final rebuttal itself. So this is the last round of rebuttals, I should have said. This is the final rebuttal. This is from Daniel for 7 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, can I share my screen, James?
Yep. Folks, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. Let YouTube know what you want more of. With that, ready for you, Daniel.
Okay, I'll just touch on what Arjuna said at the end about interpolation and Manusmriti.
Okay, guys, I think I'm gonna have to end the live stream here. I'm gonna do another part for this because I clearly cannot cover the whole debate. Maybe tomorrow or the day after, maybe I can do another second part 2. But overall, I think I covered basically what went on. Because it's been over 2 hours, 3 hours actually. Yeah. Hold on. How far along did I watch? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so that was the uh, debate, my debate review of Daniel versus this kind of like Hindu apologist. Now, to be fair, I think there is some aspect of kind of like Daniel's argument that I think I could critique a little bit. For example, one of the examples he used was that there were many kind of like animal abuses in India. That's not technically related to the topic. I mean, that has nothing to do with Hinduism, so it doesn't really matter. But overall, the point is that when you look at Hinduism and you look at texts like Bhagavad Gita or like Manusmriti and all these other kinds of things, clearly in Hinduism, uh, you know, Krishna or Bhagavad Gita in general clearly teaches that it's okay to kill people because the human body doesn't matter. Like you can clearly just destroy the human body, and this is such a disturbing teaching is because maybe I'm not being able to explain how disturbing this is. Because this is a form of nihilism, right? Because Krishna is basically justifying killing the family members. Like the Krishna is basically justifying to Arjuna, saying that it's okay to kill your family members because your family members will just lose their body, but their soul will remain, right? So this is a very disturbing teachings. Our brother Champion is here. Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum assalam, bro. Welcome back. But sadly, I'm kind of leaving. I'm just ending the stream right here because it's been over 3 hours. But I'm just having a few finishing thoughts. But anyway, so as I was saying, so basically, what Hinduism teaches, especially Bhagavad Gita, is that uh, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna basically tells Arjuna that it's okay to kill your family members because your family members will simply lose their body but not their soul, right? But by this logic, you can justify any kind of like violence, right? So basically, this is how Hinduism justifies violence, right? And this is why in India you see so much violence against Muslims because they can justify it through their religion. This is why Hinduism is the most violent religion because it literally justifies violence through by saying that, oh, the material body doesn't matter, you can just kill it. that's that's horrible, that's disgusting. But anyway, and this is the difference between Islam and Hinduism, which is that in Islam it teaches that you should not you know harm people, or like you should avoid warfare or violence, right? But if war comes to you, then you fight. Or what Hinduism teaches is that you should fight because the body doesn't matter, you can just kill it, right? So this is a difference. This is why Hinduism is the most violent religion, where Islam is not. Islam is completely balanced, where Hinduism isn't. The amount of violence exists in Hinduism is very unique and disgusting, and this is why Hinduism is the most violent religion. But regardless, I think I've covered the debate for the most part. Might do a part two. Let me know if you guys want to see that. But yeah, overall, that was a debate review. Again, thank you guys, those who joined us. If you guys like the live stream, then don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want to support me, you can support me by becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. And inshallah, my next video will come soon. I don't know when exactly, but my next video will be on I posted Aladdin. I've been meaning to make a video on him for a while. He made a new video that I think I need to cover, where he tries to debunk the Quran and says that the Quran uses bad argument and whatnot. So I'm gonna make a video on that, inshallah. So it should come out soon, inshallah, hopefully. And yeah, and thank you guys who joined me on this live stream. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time. And I don't know if brother Champion is still here or not. I think he left. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time, inshallah, on the next video. And yeah, if you guys have any question, you can ask me, since I'm leaving anyway. So I might be here for like 2 minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask in the chat. And if not, then I'll leave basically. Anyway, and all the kind of the references, I will put them in the comment section. You can check them out. Sorry if I was a bit quiet and not as loud as usual. My family members is on the other room, so I couldn't be as loud. But regardless, okay. All right, I think I'm gonna go now. Again, thank you guys for watching. Inshallah, see you guys next time. Inshallah, my next video will be on Apostle Aladdin, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, inshallah, I'll see you guys next time. Inshallah, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oh, let me play the intro and then I'll leave. Well, let me play the outro. Sorry. Here, inshallah. So yeah, inshallah, I'll see you guys next time. So Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oh, brother Champion made a question. Will you make Muhammad Sallam in the Bible part 3? Oh, yeah, inshallah. Inshallah, I've been meaning to make that video, but it's been so long. Yeah, inshallah, I will make that video. Just wait for a bit. I have a few videos in the pipeline, and then I'll make it, inshallah. So yeah, that will come, inshallah. Wait. Okay, I'm here. If you wanna ask any question, now's the last chance before I go. Again, like if you have any questions, brother Champion again says the Testify Apologetics video sounds amazing. Yeah, I've also been meaning to respond to like Testify Apologetics soon, inshallah, hopefully. So again, like stay tuned for that. So here's are the videos that might come soon. Apostle Aladdin is my priority number 1 for now, because I feel like I need to respond to his video, rubbish video that he made against the Quran. And then the second video might be on Testify Apologetics, and the third video might be on some other atheist. I haven't decided who, maybe Rational Turus or like Alex O'Connor. Haven't decided. And yeah, I guess these are the videos that are coming. So stay tuned for that. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time, inshallah. My throat is sore. Also, I might do a live stream with brother Amy NJ next week, so stay tuned for that as well. Although it's not confirmed. So yeah, inshallah, I'll see you guys next time. Inshallah, I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. I'll see you guys next time. Inshallah, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.